I stared at the legal document my mother slid across the restaurant table, her boyfriend Gary's signature already at the bottom. "Sign it, Winifred," she said coldly. "Your brother deserves half of everything you've built." My successful bakery chain, 7 years of 16-hour days, every penny I'd saved since I was 15, they wanted me to hand over 50% to my half-brother Tyler, who'd never worked a day in his life. I pushed the papers back. No. That single word changed everything. The silence that followed my refusal was suffocating. My mother Dorothy's face transformed from expectant to furious in seconds. Gary, her boyfriend of 17 years, leaned back in his chair with a calculated smirk that made my skin crawl. This wasn't the first time they'd tried to take something from me, but it was certainly the boldest. To understand how we got here, I need to take you back to when I was 12 years old. That's when my mother met Gary at a real estate conference in Denver. She was a struggling single mom working as a receptionist, and he swept her off her feet with promises of financial security and a better life. Within 6 months, they were living together, and a year later, my half-brother Tyler was born. From the moment Tyler arrived, everything changed. I went from being my mother's whole world to an inconvenient reminder of her past. Gary made it clear I was a burden he was graciously accepting. While Tyler got new toys every week, I was told to be grateful for hand-me-downs from garage sales. When Tyler wanted piano lessons, they hired the best teacher in town. When I asked to join the school band, they said instruments were too expensive. By 14, I was working at a local grocery store bagging groceries after school and on weekends. I told my mother it was to save for college, but really, I needed money for basic things like school supplies and clothes that fit. I watched Tyler grow up, surrounded by every advantage while I counted every dollar. The disparity only grew worse as we got older. Tyler's room looked like a toy store exploded in it, then later like an electronics showroom. Mine had the same furniture from when I was 8. They enrolled him in private swimming lessons, karate classes, and summer camps. I spent summers working double shifts at the grocery store and later waiting tables at a diner downtown. But something powerful happened during those long hours of work. I discovered I was good at it. Not just the physical labor, but understanding customers, managing time, solving problems on the fly. The diner owner, Mrs. Patterson, took notice. She taught me about food costs, inventory management, and customer service. She let me help with ordering and even some basic bookkeeping. By 18, I had saved $5,000. Every penny earned from thousands of hours of work, countless rude customers, and aching feet. While my classmates were planning graduation parties, I was researching small business loans and commercial real estate listings. Tyler, meanwhile, had just turned 10 and was already showing signs of following in Gary's footsteps. He'd learned that tears and tantrums got him whatever he wanted. He'd learned that work was something other people did. He'd learned that his sister existed to serve his needs, a lesson reinforced every time Dorothy forced me to cancel my plans to babysit him. I started culinary classes at the community college while working full-time. Dorothy and Gary mocked my dreams of opening a bakery, calling it a waste of time and money. "Stick to waitressing," Gary would say. "It's steady work for someone like you." The implication was clear. Someone without a father, without connections, without their support. At 22, I took the biggest risk of my life. I used my savings as a down payment on a small commercial space in a struggling strip mall. The location was far from ideal, but it was what I could afford. I named it Rise and Shine Bakery, a name that reflected both the early morning hours and my determination to succeed despite everything. Those first months nearly broke me. I was at the bakery by 3 in the morning baking everything myself. I'd work until 8 at night, go home to my tiny studio apartment, sleep for a few hours, and do it all again. I survived on day-old pastries and determination. Slowly, word spread. My coffee was strong, my pastries were fresh, and my prices were fair. Local office workers started stopping by for morning coffee. The nearby hospital staff discovered I'd stay open late for their shift changes. Within a year, I was breaking even. By the second year, I was making a small profit. That's when Dorothy and Gary started paying attention. Suddenly, they were interested in my little bakery project. They dropped by occasionally, always when Tyler wanted expensive pastries for free. They'd make comments about how families should support each other, their eyes scanning my equipment and calculating its value. By 25, I'd opened my second location. By 27, I had 5 stores across the state. By 29, I owned 12 locations in 3 states, employed over 200 people, and had revenue in the millions. I'd built something from nothing, and I'd done it entirely on my own. Tyler, now 21, had a very different story. He'd been expelled from his expensive private high school for never attending classes. He dropped out of 3 different colleges each time, with Gary making excuses about the schools not understanding his unique learning style. He lived in their basement, emerging only to ask for money or food. His biggest achievement was reaching level 80 in some online game. Which brings us back to that restaurant, to that moment when Dorothy slid those papers across the table. As I looked at her face, twisted with entitlement and greed, something else caught my eye. She pulled out a folder thick with papers and opened it with theatrical precision. "You think you did this all on your own," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Think again, Winifred. I've kept records. Every penny I spent raising you, every meal, every piece of clothing, every school supply. You owe this family $47,000 for your upbringing, and that's not even counting interest." She spread the papers out like a dealer showing a winning hand. Spreadsheets dating back to my birth. Receipts for groceries allocated to show my portion. Doctor's visits, school fees, even a breakdown of utility bills based on my percentage of household use. "We invested in you," Gary added, his real estate salesman smile making me nauseous. "Now it's time for returns on that investment. Sign the papers or we'll collect what you owe us, one way or another." The spreadsheets Gary produced were meticulous in their delusion. Each page represented a year of my childhood, with columns for food, housing, clothing, medical care, and something labeled miscellaneous parental services. He'd calculated an hourly rate for Dorothy's time spent driving me to school, helping with homework, attending parent-teacher conferences. They'd even itemized birthday presents, adding compound interest that would make a loan shark blush. You see, Gary explained, running his finger down the columns like a professor teaching economics. "We've been very conservative in our calculations. Market rate for childcare in our area, adjusted for inflation. Standard investment returns if we'd put this money in the S&P 500 instead of you. It's all here in black and white." Dorothy nodded, along her expression a mask of righteous indignation. "We could have had a comfortable retirement by now if we hadn't spent so much raising you. Meanwhile, Tyler got the scraps, the leftovers of our resources, because so much went to you." I almost laughed at the absurdity. Tyler, who had a car before he could legally drive. Tyler, whose gaming computer cost more than my first commercial oven. Tyler, who had never worn a hand-me-down in his life. "These calculations," I said slowly, looking at the papers, "did you include the money I gave you, the $10,000 to fix your roof last year, the car I bought Tyler for his 18th birthday that he crashed within a month, the vacation to Hawaii I paid for?" Dorothy waved her hand dismissively. "Gifts don't count against debts. That's basic accounting." Before I could respond, the restaurant door chimed. Tyler strolled in 20 minutes late, wearing designer jeans and a gaming tournament t-shirt that probably cost more than my servers made in a day. He slouched into the booth beside his parents, barely acknowledging my existence. "Did she sign yet?" he asked, already pulling out his phone. "I've got my eye on this sick new location for my flagship store. Downtown, lots of foot traffic. The realtor says we need to move fast." "Your flagship store?" I repeated, incredulous. Tyler finally looked at me, his expression one of practiced boredom. Well, yeah, can't have my business operating out of strip malls and medical districts. I need to elevate the brand, take it to the next level. You've done okay for a beginner, but it's time for professional management. Professional management, I echoed. When exactly did you become a professional anything? His face flushed, but Gary put a hand on his shoulder. Tyler has been studying your business model. He has fresh ideas, a modern perspective. You should be grateful he's willing to help modernize your antiquated operations. Antiquated. My sales grew 30% last year. Imagine what they could do under Tyler's leadership, Dorothy interjected. He understands social media viral marketing, things you're too old to grasp. Too old, I was 29. Tyler leaned forward, suddenly animated. I've already got influencers lined up. We rebrand Go Upscale. Stop catering to hospital workers and office drones. Think celebrity endorsements, Instagram-worthy aesthetics. I'm talking major expansion into Los Angeles, New York. Go big or go home. With what money? I asked. Our money, he said simply, from our stores. The possessiveness in his voice made my stomach turn. He'd already transferred ownership in his mind, already spent profits he'd never earned. I watched him scroll through his phone, probably looking at luxury cars or expensive watches, spending money that existed only in his imagination. I need some time to think, I said, starting to gather my things. Dorothy's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. Her manicured nails, paid for with money I'd given her for emergency medical bills, dug into my skin. There's nothing to think about, she hissed. You sign now or things get uncomfortable. You think you're the only one who knows how to document things. I've been recording our conversations for months. Every time you complained about a difficult customer, every time you mentioned a problem with an employee, every time you expressed doubt about a business decision. She pulled out her phone, waving it like a weapon. How do you think your precious investors will react when they hear you talking about how overwhelmed you are, how you're not sure you can handle the expansion, how you sometimes think about selling everything and running away? My blood ran cold. Those had been private conversations, moments of vulnerability shared with my mother during what I thought were supportive phone calls. She'd called me late at night asking how I was doing, seeming genuinely concerned. I'd opened up about the stress of running a growing business, the normal fears and doubts any entrepreneur faces. You recorded private conversations between a mother and daughter. I protected my family's interests, she replied smoothly, something you clearly never learned to do. Family comes first, Winifred, or it's supposed to. Gary pulled out his own phone, showing me a contact list. I know people at your bank, your main suppliers, even some of your bigger commercial customers. The business community is smaller than you think, and reputation is everything. Do you really want to test how much damage we can do? That's extortion, I said quietly. That's family, Dorothy countered. Sign the papers, Winifred. 50% to Tyler. It's more than fair considering what you owe us. Consider the debt forgiven as our gift to you. Tyler hadn't looked up from his phone during this entire exchange. He was shopping for cars, I realized, scrolling through listings for Lamborghinis and Ferraris. The casual arrogance of it, the absolute certainty that my life's work would simply be handed to him, made my decision crystal clear. No, I said, standing up. I'm not signing anything. If you think you have a legal claim to my business, then take me to court. But we're done here. Dorothy's face went through a series of expressions, shock, rage, then something colder and more calculating. You'll regret this, she said quietly. I promise you that. Gary was already on his phone texting rapidly. Tyler finally looked up, confusion replacing his earlier confidence. Wait, what? She can't just say no. Tell her she can't say no. But I was already walking away, my hands shaking but my resolve firm. Behind me, I heard Dorothy's voice, low and venomous. She wants to play hardball. Fine, she has no idea what we're capable of. As I pushed through the restaurant door into the afternoon sun, my phone was already buzzing with texts from my management team. Whatever Gary had set in motion, it was happening fast. The war for my business, my life's work had officially begun. But what none of them knew was that I'd learned more from those years of struggle than just how to bake bread and balance books. I'd learned how to fight for what was mine, and I was just getting started. The next morning arrived with violence, not the physical kind, but the sort of calculated destruction that leaves deeper scars. I pulled into the parking lot of my flagship bakery at 4:30 in the morning, my headlights illuminating words spray painted across the pristine windows, "Selfish daughter" in blood red letters, 3 feet tall. My hands trembled as I parked, not from fear but from rage. This location wasn't just any store. It was my first, the one I'd built with my own hands, where I'd spent countless 18-hour days perfecting recipes and building customer relationships. Seeing it defaced felt like watching someone vandalize my child. I called the police while examining the damage. The vandalism was thorough. Every window covered paint splattered on the door handles. Even the small garden where we grew herbs for our specialty breads had been trampled. Whoever did this had taken their time, wanted to make sure I couldn't open without extensive cleaning. "Ma'am, the security system's been tampered with," Officer Rodriguez informed me after checking the cameras. "Looks like someone sprayed the lenses with paint before doing the rest. Pretty sophisticated for simple vandalism." Sophisticated? That had Gary's fingerprints all over it. He'd bragged often enough about his connections, his network of contractors and maintenance workers. Finding someone to disable security cameras would be child's play for him. By 6 in the morning, my staff had arrived to help clean. They worked without complaint, scrubbing paint and sweeping glass, but I caught the worried glances they exchanged. Sarah, my assistant manager, pulled me aside while the others worked. Winifred, I need to tell you something," she said, glancing around nervously. "Yesterday afternoon, while you were at your meeting, Tyler came by. He was talking to some of the staff, asking about schedules, pay rates, our supplier contracts." My stomach tightened. What did he want? He said he was doing research for a business class project, but then she hesitated, wringing her cleaning rag. "He offered me a job, said he'd be opening his own chain soon, that he'd double my salary if I came to work for him. He said you were going to be stepping back anyway, that there were going to be big changes." "What did you tell him?" Sarah straightened, her loyalty evident. "I told him I wasn't interested and asked him to leave. But Winifred, he didn't go quietly. He took photos of everything. Our equipment, our recipe boards in the kitchen, even tried to get into the office before I stopped him." Recipe boards? Those recipes had taken me years to perfect, countless experiments to get the exact texture and flavor that kept customers coming back. The thought of Tyler, who couldn't even make toast without burning it, claiming my creations as his own, made my blood boil. "Thank you for telling me," I said, "and thank you for your loyalty. Document everything if he comes back. Times, dates, what he says, what he does. We might need it later." By 8 in the morning, we'd managed to open, though 2 hours late. Regular customers expressed shock at the vandalism, many offering support and buying extra to help. But the damage was already spreading beyond paint and broken glass. Dorothy had started her social media campaign at dawn. The posts were crafted with the same calculated cruelty as the vandalism. Photos of young Tyler looking sad, captions about a sister who forgot where she came from. Stories about how I'd refused to help my struggling family despite my success. She painted herself as a devoted mother whose daughter had abandoned her for money. "Can you believe this?" One of my regular customers, Janet, showed me her phone. "Your mother's post has been shared over 200 times. People are commenting horrible things about you." I looked at the comments. Some defended me, but many others bought into Dorothy's narrative. The story of the ungrateful daughter who hoarded her wealth while her family suffered was compelling, especially when told by a crying mother. My phone rang constantly, first reporters wanting comments about the family drama. Then, more ominously, business calls. My main flour supplier called to inform me they were reviewing our contract. The corporate client who bought our catering services for their offices wanted to discuss recent concerning developments. Even my insurance company called about the vandalism claim, mentioning they'd heard troubling information about potential internal family disputes affecting business stability. By noon, the situation had escalated further. Tyler had visited 3 more of my locations. At each one, he'd introduced himself to staff as the incoming co-owner, asked probing questions about operations, and made comments about upcoming changes that left employees anxious and confused. He'd been particularly interested in our newest location, the one in the affluent Riverside district that had the highest profit margins. He told Marcus that his position might be redundant soon. My manager from that location reported over the phone. Said he was bringing in his own team. Marcus has been with us for 4 years, Winifred. He's got a new baby. He's terrified about losing his job. I spent the afternoon doing damage control, calling each location, personally assuring managers and staff that no ownership changes were happening, that their jobs were secure. But I could hear the doubt in their voices. In the food service industry, where margins were thin and competition fierce, uncertainty was poison. The final blow of the day came at 4 in the afternoon. Benjamin Walsh, my primary investor who'd helped fund the expansion to the 3rd state, called for an emergency meeting. I met him at his office, noting how he didn't offer his usual warm greeting or coffee. "Winifred, I'll be direct," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "I've been contacted by someone claiming to have their information about instability in your leadership. They provided recordings suggesting you're overwhelmed, considering selling, unsure about the business direction." The folder contained transcripts, private conversations with my mother twisted out of context. Every moment of doubt I'd shared, every fear I'd expressed during late-night calls when I thought I was talking to someone who cared about me. "Oz, Benjamin, these are private conversations with my mother taken completely out of context. Every business owner has moments of doubt. It doesn't affect my commitment or ability." He nodded slowly. "I understand that. But I've also been informed about potential legal action regarding ownership disputes. My partners are concerned. We have significant capital invested in your expansion." "There's no legitimate ownership dispute. My mother and her boyfriend are trying to extort 50% of my business for my half-brother, who's never worked a day in his life. They have no legal claim." "Perhaps not," Benjamin conceded. "But legal battles, family drama, negative publicity, these things affect business. Customer perception matters in your industry. I'm not pulling funding yet, but I need you to resolve this quickly and quietly. My partners are watching closely." I left his office feeling the walls closing in. In one day, they'd attacked my property, my reputation, my employees' security, and my investor relationships. The speed and coordination of it suggested planning preparation. This wasn't a spontaneous reaction to my refusal. This was a war they'd been preparing to wage. That evening, exhausted and discouraged, I sat in my office at the flagship store. The windows were clean now, but I could still see faint outlines where the paint had been. My phone buzzed with yet another text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then recognized the area code. Nevada. The message was simple. "Your mother's boyfriend isn't who you think he is. Call me." It was signed Emma with a phone number. Emma, Tyler's ex-girlfriend, the one Dorothy had forbidden him from seeing, claiming she was a gold digger only interested in their family's money. The irony wasn't lost on me. I stared at the message, wondering if this was another trap, another manipulation. But something told me this was different. The area code Nevada. Gary claimed his real estate business had connections there, but he always been vague about details. As I debated whether to call, Sarah knocked on my office door. Her face was grave as she entered, closing the door behind her. "Winifred, I didn't want to worry you earlier with everything else going on, but there's something else about Tyler's visit yesterday." She pulled out her phone, bringing up a voice recording app. "After what happened this morning, I thought you should hear this. I started recording when he wouldn't leave." She pressed play and Tyler's voice filled the room, arrogant and careless. Look, Sarah, you seem smart. Smart enough to know which way the wind is blowing. My mom and Gary, they've got plans. Big plans, this whole thing with my sister. It's been in the works for 2 years, ever since her business hit 7 figures. She can fight all she wants, but we've got everything documented, every angle covered. In 6 months, I'll own everything, and I'll remember who was loyal and who wasn't. Think about your future. The recording ended, leaving us in silence. 2 years. They'd been planning to take my business for 2 years, smiling at family dinners, accepting my gifts, all while sharpening their knives for my back. Can I keep this recording? I asked. Sarah nodded. I made backups. I've got a bad feeling about all this, Winifred. What kind of family does this to their own? The kind that never saw me as family at all, I thought. Just an investment to be cashed out when the returns looked good enough. After Sarah left, I made 2 decisions. First, I called my lawyer, Amanda Chen, and scheduled an emergency meeting for the morning. Second, I called the number Emma had sent. She answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. Winifred, thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would. You said Gary isn't who I think he is. What does that mean? There was a pause then. How much do you really know about your mother's boyfriend? Because I've been doing some digging since Tyler and I broke up, and what I found... Let's just say your business isn't the first one he's tried to steal, and your mother, she might not even be legally married to him. The room suddenly felt very cold. Outside, the evening sun cast long shadows through the clean windows, and I wondered how many more attacks tomorrow would bring. But for the first time since this started, I felt like I might not be fighting alone. Tell me everything, I said to Emma, and she did. The morning after Emma's revelations began with a phone call that made my blood run cold. My business banker, Robert Hutchinson, a man who'd been instrumental in approving my expansion loans, sounded unusually formal. Winifred, I'm calling to inform you that your business credit line is under review. You'll need to come in this afternoon to discuss some concerns that have been raised. Concerns, Robert, I've never missed a payment. My revenue is up 30% this year alone. I understand, but certain information has come to our attention regarding potential ownership disputes and business instability. The review board wants clarification before we can continue our relationship. Gary's reach into my financial world had begun. After we hung up, I realized this was surgical precision at work. He'd mentioned knowing people at my bank, and now those connections were being weaponized. By 9 a.m, the assault intensified. My Aunt Patricia called her voice cold and businesslike in a way I'd never heard before. Winifred, I need you to repay the $20,000 I loaned you 5 years ago. I need it within 30 days. Aunt Patricia, we agreed that was a long-term loan with no fixed repayment date. You said to pay you back when I could, and I've been sending you monthly payments. Well, circumstances have changed. Dorothy explained your financial situation, how well you're doing. If you can afford to expand to multiple states, you can afford to pay back family debts. I need that money now. The call ended with her threat of legal action if I didn't comply. $20,000 wasn't going to break me, but if every family member who'd ever helped me suddenly called in debts, the cumulative effect would strain my cash flow significantly. It was death by 1,000 cuts, each one precisely placed. My Uncle Richard called an hour later with a similar demand for the $10,000 he'd loaned me. Then a cousin wanted the $5,000 back. Each conversation followed the same script. Dorothy had informed them of my success, my selfishness, my refusal to help Tyler. They needed their money back immediately. Between fielding these calls, I was trying to manage the growing crisis at my stores. 3 employees had called in sick at different locations, an unusual coincidence that felt orchestrated. 2 suppliers had contacted me about reviewing terms. Even my commercial landlord for the Riverside location mentioned receiving concerning information about my business stability. Sarah arrived at my office with more bad news. Tyler's back, she said, showing me security footage on her tablet. This time, at the Riverside store. He's in the parking lot talking to staff as they arrive for their shifts. The footage showed Tyler dressed in an expensive suit I'd never seen him wear before, holding court with my employees. He was animated, gesturing widely, clearly making some kind of pitch. Several employees looked uncomfortable, but others seemed interested in what he was saying. "I'm heading there now," I said, grabbing my keys. "Winifred, there's more," Sarah said, her face grave. "Marcus just texted. Tyler's not just talking to staff. He's got two men with him who claim to be restaurant consultants. They're asking to see our kitchen set up our storage systems. Marcus is stalling, but he doesn't know what to do." Restaurant consultants. The boldness of it took my breath away. Tyler was conducting corporate espionage in broad daylight, probably planning to replicate our entire operation. Every efficiency I'd developed, every system I'd perfected through trial and error, he wanted to steal it all. The drive to Riverside took 20 minutes that felt like hours. When I arrived, Tyler's rented Mercedes was parked prominently in front, taking up 2 spaces. Through the windows, I could see him inside my restaurant, sitting at the best table like he owned the place. I entered to find chaos disguised as calm. Tyler had ordered food and was making a show of critiquing everything. 2 men in cheap suits flanked him, tablets out photographing everything from our menu boards to our customer flow patterns. "The coffee's bitter," Tyler announced loudly enough for other customers to hear. "And these pastries are dry, definitely not worth the premium prices. I can see why you need professional management, Winifred." Several regular customers looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Chen, who bought our coffee cake every Tuesday for her book club, was frowning at her plate, suddenly second-guessing her longtime favorite. "Tyler, you need to leave," I said calmly, though rage burned in my chest. "This is private property and you're disrupting my business." He leaned back, smirking. "Just conducting market research, public restaurant, right? Besides, I should know what I'm getting into when I take over, due diligence and all that." One of his consultants was edging toward the kitchen door. I stepped to block him. "The kitchen is employees only." "Hostile work environment," the man muttered, making a note on his tablet. "Resistance to improvement initiatives. Classic signs of stagnant management." Marcus appeared at my shoulder, his usual calm demeanor strained. 3 employees didn't show up for their shift today. They all texted last night saying they'd gotten better offers from a new bakery chain that's supposedly opening soon. Tyler's smirk widened. "Competition's healthy for the market. Can't blame people for seeking better opportunities." "You mean the imaginary bakery you're funding with my money?" I shot back. "Nothing imaginary about it," Tyler said, pulling out his phone to show me a logo, a phoenix rising from flames. "Rising Phoenix Bakeries. Like it, we're going to rise from your ashes. Already got investors interested. Amazing what doors open when you have the right connections and aren't afraid to think big." The calculated cruelty of the name hit me. Rising from my ashes, they weren't just trying to take my business. They wanted to destroy me in the process and build their empire on my ruins. "Get out," I said quietly. "Now or I'm calling the police." Tyler stood slowly, his hired consultants flanking him. "Sure thing, sis. But you might want to check your phone. Mom's been busy this morning." As they left, leaving their barely touched food and a mess on the table, I pulled out my phone to find dozens of notifications. Dorothy had escalated her social media war. She'd posted what appeared to be financial documents, selective screenshots showing my business's gross revenue with captions about how I hoarded wealth while family struggled. "My daughter makes millions while her brother can't afford college." One post read, "I sacrificed everything to raise her, and this is how she repays me." The comments were brutal. People who didn't know me didn't know the truth, were calling me heartless, selfish evil. Someone had found my business pages and was leaving 1-star reviews on every platform. "Owner is a horrible person who abandons family," read one. "Would never support someone so greedy," said another. My phone rang. It was Amanda Chen, my lawyer, her voice urgent. Winifred, you need to see this. Your mother and Gary just filed a lawsuit. They're claiming unjust enrichment, breach of implied contract, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Emotional distress. They're destroying my life and claiming emotional distress. It gets worse, Amanda continued. They're seeking immediate injunctive relief to freeze your business assets pending resolution. They claim you're likely to dispose of assets to avoid paying legitimate debts. Winifred, if a judge grants this, you won't be able to access your business accounts. The room spun slightly. Freezing my assets would mean no payroll, no supplier payments, no operating capital. It would destroy my business in weeks, maybe days. How quickly can they get a hearing? I asked. They've requested an emergency hearing. Could be as soon as tomorrow, if they get the right judge. Winifred, I need all your financial records, every communication with your mother, any evidence of their threats. We need to file a counter motion immediately. After hanging up, I stood in my restaurant watching my staff nervously serve customers who were reading negative reviews on their phones. The morning rush, usually our busiest time, was noticeably lighter. The poison was spreading faster than I could contain it. Sarah approached with a tablet showing our real-time sales data. We're down 40% from a typical Tuesday morning across all locations. The negative reviews are killing us. And it's only been 2 days, I said, the weight of it settling on my shoulders. My phone buzzed with a text from Benjamin Walsh, my investor. Board meeting tomorrow at 2. Be prepared to present a crisis management plan. Another text, this one from Emma in Nevada. Found more information about Gary. He's done this before. 3 businesses in Nevada, same pattern. Can we meet? I have documents. As I stood there, surrounded by the business I'd built with my own hands, watching it being systematically attacked from every angle, something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't just about money or even my business. This was about power control and the sick satisfaction my family got from trying to destroy what they couldn't create themselves. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd pushed too hard too fast. In their greed and arrogance, they were leaving trails, making enemies, creating a pattern that could be documented and exposed. Sarah, I said, turning to my loyal assistant manager, I need you to do something for me. Start documenting everything. Every interaction with Tyler, every employee who suddenly quits, every suspicious incident. Times, dates, names, everything. She nodded, understanding immediately. Already started a file. What else can I do? Keep the stores running. Keep the staff calm. I'm going to be fighting this on multiple fronts, and I need to know the operations are in good hands. As if on cue, my phone rang again. Another supplier, another concern about my stability. The financial warfare was intensifying, but something my grandmother used to say echoed in my mind. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Dorothy and Gary had shown me exactly who they were. Now it was time to show them who I'd become. Amanda Chen's law office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, its windows offering a panoramic view of the city I'd built my business in. She'd cleared her morning schedule for our emergency meeting, and as I sat across from her massive oak desk, I felt the first hint of hope since this nightmare began. The lawsuit is aggressive but sloppy, Amanda said, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the documents. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. But Winifred, some of these financial claims they're making, they'd need documentation to support them. Do they actually have receipts for raising you? They showed me spreadsheets at the restaurant, detailed breakdowns of every expense from my birth to age 18. Amanda made a note. We'll need to see those in discovery, but here's what's interesting. They filed this as a business dispute, not a family matter. That opens doors for us to investigate their business dealings. She pulled out a folder. I've already had my investigator do some preliminary work on Gary's real estate company. What she showed me made my stomach drop. Multiple LLCs, all interconnected, all showing suspicious transfers of funds. properties, bought and sold between his various companies at wildly different values. Classic signs of financial manipulation. This is just the surface, Amanda explained, but there's something else. Gary's company is in serious trouble. 3 properties in foreclosure, multiple liens, and according to public records, he owes nearly $400,000 to various creditors. 400,000! No wonder they were desperate for my money. There's more. Amanda continued pulling out another document. I ran a basic background check. Gary has been sued 6 times in the past decade. 3 of those lawsuits involve business partnerships, where he allegedly stole funds or manipulated ownership documents. A pattern. Emma had mentioned he'd done this before in Nevada. I need to hire a forensic accountant, Amanda said. Someone who can dig deep into his finances. It won't be cheap, but if we can prove financial desperation and a pattern of fraud, it destroys their credibility. Do it, I said without hesitation. Whatever it costs. My phone buzzed with a message from Emma. Can you meet today? I'm driving to your city. Have documents you need to see. After leaving Amanda's office, I met Emma at a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town. Tyler's ex-girlfriend was nothing like Dorothy had described. Instead of the money-hungry party girl I'd been told about, I found an intelligent young woman with tired eyes and a folder thick with papers. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding the folder across the table. I started looking into Gary after Tyler and I broke up. The way they talked about money about your business, something felt wrong. I opened the folder and found a nightmare documented in black and white. Business registrations in Nevada showing Gary's involvement in multiple failed companies, court documents from lawsuits. But the most shocking discovery was a marriage certificate from Nevada, dated 15 years ago. He's married, I gasped. Emma nodded grimly. To a woman named Linda. They never divorced. I hired a private investigator after I found this. She lives in Reno with their 2 kids. Gary sends money occasionally, but hasn't seen them in years. My mother's marriage to Gary was invalid. 17 years of her life built on a lie. There's more. Emma continued pulling out photos. These are from social media. Linda's kids. They're 14 and 16 now. Gary abandoned them when the youngest was a baby. I stared at the photos of 2 teenagers who bore an unmistakable resemblance to Gary. My mother had no idea these children existed. Why didn't you tell Tyler? I asked. Emma's expression hardened. I tried. He didn't want to hear it. Said I was jealous, trying to break up his family. That's when I realized the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Tyler knows exactly who his father is and doesn't care as long as the money keeps flowing. But there is no money, I said. Gary's broke. Which is why they need yours, Emma replied. Look at this. She showed me another document, a credit report. I shouldn't have this, but my PI has connections. Gary has been living off credit cards and borrowed money for 2 years. Every penny going to maintain the illusion of success, the house they live in second mortgage, and 3 months behind on payments. The pieces were falling into place. The desperation, the coordinated attack, the 2-year timeline Tyler had mentioned. They'd been planning this since Gary's financial house of cards started collapsing. Will you testify to this? I asked. If it goes to court? Emma nodded firmly. Tyler treated me like garbage, and his parents were worse. Dorothy called me a gold digger while her boyfriend was stealing from business partners. Yes, I'll testify. After Emma left, I sat in my car processing everything. My mother wasn't legally married. Her boyfriend was a serial con artist with an abandoned family. They were drowning in debt and saw my business as their life raft. The cruelty of using my mother's recordings of weaponizing family bonds for money made more sense now. Desperate people do desperate things. My phone rang. It was my bank manager, Robert. Winifred, I wanted to give you a heads up. Someone's been calling board members directly, making serious allegations about your business practices. I can't hold off the review much longer. Who's calling them? I asked, though I knew the answer. I can't say officially, but he mentioned being a future business partner of yours. Very persistent, very detailed in his concerns. Gary was working his network hard, but now I had ammunition of my own. I called Amanda immediately. How quickly can we file a countersuit? Depends on what ground, she replied. Defamation, tortious interference with business relations, fraud, conspiracy, and cyberstalking for starters. Also, I need you to research bigamy laws. Gary's already married to someone else. The silence on the other end stretched before Amanda spoke, her voice carrying new energy. Are you serious? He's married? Never divorced. Has 2 kids in Nevada he abandoned. I have documents. This changes everything, Amanda said, excitement creeping into her professional tone. If we can prove he's been lying to your mother, that this whole relationship is fraudulent, it undermines everything. Their lawsuit becomes the action of a con artist, not a family dispute. As we spoke, I received a text from Sarah with security footage from our downtown location. Tyler was there again, this time with different people. The timestamp showed 30 minutes ago, while I was meeting with Emma. I need to go, I told Amanda. How soon can you file? Give me 24 hours. And Winifred, start thinking about whether you want to press criminal charges. Fraud, identity theft, bigamy. These aren't just civil matters. Criminal charges. The thought of my mother in legal trouble made my chest tight. But then I remembered those spreadsheets, calculating the cost of my childhood like I was an investment property. Driving to the downtown location, I noticed something strange. A van was parked outside, its side painted with Rising Phoenix Bakeries, coming soon. Tyler wasn't just threatening to open a competing business, he was advertising it outside my stores. Inside, I found my staff in uproar. The people with Tyler had been food bloggers and local influencers. He'd brought them for an impromptu tasting comparison, buying my products and loudly critiquing them while promising better versions when his stores opened. He told everyone we use frozen dough. Marcus informed me, his jaw clenched. Said his stores would have real bakers, not factory workers. One of the bloggers live-streamed it. The damage to my reputation was accelerating. Every day brought new attacks from new angles. But something had shifted in me after seeing those documents. This wasn't my family attacking me. This was a criminal enterprise that happened to include my mother. That evening, I called a meeting with my senior staff. 20 managers and assistant managers gathered in our main kitchen faces, showing the strain of the past few days. I know things have been difficult, I began. I know you're worried, but I want you to know the truth about what's happening. I told them everything. Gary's debts, his real marriage, the calculated plan to steal the business. I showed them Tyler's recorded admission about the 2-year scheme. I laid out my legal strategy and my determination to fight. Some of you have been approached with job offers from Tyler, I continued. I won't hold it against anyone who's tempted, but I want you to know that his promises are built on lies and theft. There is no Rising Phoenix Bakeries. There's no funding. There's just a desperate family trying to steal what we've built together. The room was quiet before Sarah spoke up. We're with you, Winifred. This is our business too. We've all put our hearts into building it. One by one, the others nodded agreement. These weren't just employees. They were people who'd helped me build something from nothing. They'd been there for 16-hour days for the celebration when we turned our first profit for every milestone along the way. As the meeting ended, Marcus pulled me aside. 3 people called today about the job offers from Tyler. They wanted to know if they should take them. I told them to get any offers in writing. He smiled grimly. Somehow, I doubt Tyler will put his promises on paper. That night, I worked late preparing documents for Amanda. Financial records, communications, timeline of events. As I organized everything, a pattern emerged that made my blood run cold. Going through old emails and texts, I found subtle references dating back exactly 2 years. Questions about my business structure. Casual inquiries about profits, Dorothy's sudden interest in my expansion plans. They'd been gathering intelligence for 2 years, planning their attack, waiting for the perfect moment. The most chilling discovery was in my credit report. 6 months ago, someone had run multiple credit checks on me and my business. The inquiries came from different companies, but all traced back to addresses associated with Gary's various LLCs. They'd been probing for weaknesses, looking for leverage. My phone buzzed with a message from my grandmother. Heard about the family troubles. Call me when you can. Remember, wolves don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. Despite everything, I smiled. Grandma had always seen through Dorothy's facade, had always known there was something wrong with Gary. Maybe that's why Dorothy had slowly cut her out of our lives over the years. As midnight approached, I sat in my empty bakery, surrounded by the evidence of what I'd built and what they were trying to steal. Tomorrow, Amanda would file our countersuit. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. But tonight, I had clarity. This wasn't about family anymore. This was about criminals who'd made the mistake of targeting someone who'd learned to fight before she'd learned to walk. They wanted a war. They were about to get one. The next morning arrived with Amanda's countersuit filed and a new crisis brewing. Dorothy stood on my doorstep at 6 a.m, her face a mask of maternal concern that didn't reach her calculating eyes. For a moment, I considered not opening the door, but something in her posture made me curious. This wasn't her usual aggressive stance. This was something else. "We need to talk," she said, her voice softer than I'd heard in years. Without lawyers, without Gary, just mother and daughter. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where she'd once helped me with homework back when I believed she cared. Now, watching her calculated movements, I wondered if any of it had ever been real. "I know about the credit cards," I said before she could start her performance. "The ones you took out in my name when I was 15. Her face went through several expressions before settling on defiance. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out the forensic accountant's preliminary report, sliding it across the table. $30,000 in credit cards opened when I was a minor. My social security number, your signatures. It's all here in black and white. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, she lifted her chin and the mask dropped completely. "You were going to leave," she said, her voice cold. "You had all these dreams about college, about getting out. What was I supposed to do? Let you abandon us. I needed to make sure you couldn't run away." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. "You destroyed my credit to keep me trapped." "I kept our family together," she snapped. "You think it was easy raising you alone before Gary came along? You think I wanted to work those dead-end jobs? I sacrificed everything for you, and the minute you got successful, you forgot where you came from. You stole my identity. You committed fraud against your own daughter." Dorothy laughed, a bitter sound that filled my kitchen. "Fraud! I'm your mother. Everything I did was for your own good, to keep you close, to make sure you understood the value of family. And look how you repay me, hiring lawyers, spreading lies about Gary." "What lies? That he's already married, that he abandoned 2 children in Nevada." Her face went white. For the first time since this began, I saw genuine shock in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out the marriage certificate Emma had given me, along with photos of Gary's other children. Dorothy's hands shook as she examined them, her carefully constructed world crumbling with each piece of evidence. "No," she whispered. "He said his ex-wife died. He said he'd never had children. Her name is Linda. She lives in Reno with their kids, teenagers now. He never divorced her, which means your marriage to him is invalid. You've been living a lie for 17 years. The transformation was instant. The shock morphed into rage, but not at Gary, at me. "You're lying. This is fake. You created these to turn me against him." "Dorothy, I didn't create court documents from Nevada. I didn't manufacture a 15-year-old marriage certificate. Gary lied to you. He's been lying from the beginning." She stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. "Even if this is true, it changes nothing. You still owe us." You still need to provide for Tyler. He's your brother. My half-brother who's actively trying to destroy my business. He's family, she screamed. That means something even if you've forgotten it. Gary might have lied about some things, but he's been more of a parent to you than your worthless father ever was. We deserve compensation for that. The mention of my father, who died when I was 8, was a low blow even for her, but it revealed something important. In her mind, relationships were transactional. Love came with a price tag. Get out of my house, I said quietly, and if you come back, I'll call the police. She grabbed the documents, shoving them into her purse. This isn't over. You think you're so smart with your lawyers and your investigators. Gary has resources you can't imagine. We'll bury you and your precious bakery. After she left, I deadbolted the door and leaned against it, shaking. The credit card revelation had been my nuclear option saved for court, but seeing her here, playing the wounded mother, I needed her to know I knew everything. My phone rang immediately. Gary. You stupid little girl, he snarled without preamble. You think showing Dorothy some forged documents changes anything she knows? I'm devoted to her, to our family. Your pathetic attempts to divide us won't work. They're not forged, Gary. Or should I call you Mr. Henderson? That's the name on your Nevada marriage license. The pause was telling. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its bluster. Ancient history. Linda and I have an understanding. Does she understand that you're committing bigamy? Does she know you're trying to steal my business to pay your debts? You have no idea who you're messing with, Gary threatened. I've destroyed bigger businesses than your little bakery chain. I've got connections you can't imagine. Like the IRS, I asked sweetly, because they're very interested in your tax returns, especially the ones where you claimed business losses on properties you transferred between your shell companies at inflated values. Another pause. In the background, I could hear Dorothy's voice, shrill and demanding. The documents had shaken her more than she'd admitted. 24 hours, Gary said finally. You have 24 hours to come to your senses and sign those papers. After that, we unleash everything. And I mean everything, Winifred. Every skeleton in your closet, real or invented. Your reputation won't survive what we have planned. He hung up before I could respond. 24 hours. They were escalating to their endgame. I called Amanda immediately. They're planning something big for tomorrow. Gary just gave me a 24-hour ultimatum. Good, Amanda said, surprising me. Desperate people make mistakes. I've got news too. The forensic accountant found something interesting. Gary's been siphoning money from your mother's accounts for years. Joint accounts where he's the primary, but the money came from her salary. He's been funding his failed business ventures with her income. She won't believe it. She'll say she gave it to him willingly. Maybe. But there's something else. Your grandmother has been trying to reach you. She says she has information about Dorothy that might help. Grandmother. I'd been so focused on the immediate battle, I'd forgotten about our family matriarch. At 86, she lived in an assisted living facility an hour away. Dorothy visited her monthly dutiful visits that always coincided with Social Security check deposits. I drove out to see her that afternoon, finding her in the garden tending to roses despite her arthritis. Her eyes, sharp as ever, lit up when she saw me. Winifred, she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of lavender and wisdom. I've been wondering when you'd come. Dorothy's been telling me stories about you, but I know my granddaughters. The real one and the one she wishes you were. We sat on a bench overlooking the garden while I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, occasionally patting my hand when the betrayals cut too deep to hide. I'm not surprised, she said when I finished. Dorothy's always been about the money. Even as a child, she'd steal from her sister's piggy bank and claim it was borrowed, but there's something you need to know. She stood carefully leading me to her room. From a locked drawer, she pulled out a folder. I've been documenting things, she said. Call it an old woman's paranoia, but I never trusted Gary. And lately, Dorothy's been pushing hard for me to sign a power of attorney. She says it's for my own good, but I'm not senile yet. The folder contained records of Dorothy's visits, always around check time, requests for loans that were never repaid, and most damning, a recording on her phone from last month. "I learned to use the voice recorder," grandmother said proudly. "Dorothy doesn't know I have a smartphone, thinks I'm too old for technology." The recording was clear. Dorothy's voice talking to Gary on speakerphone during what she thought was a private moment while grandmother was in the bathroom. "She's got at least 200,000 in accounts," Dorothy said on the recording. "Plus, the house is worth another 300,000. Once we get power of attorney, we can leverage that for loans. She won't last much longer anyway." "V. Focus on Winifred first," Gary's voice replied. "One score at a time. But yeah, get the POA papers ready. We'll need every asset we can grab once this goes south." My stomach churned. They weren't just after me. They were planning to drain my grandmother, too. The woman who'd raised Dorothy, who'd sacrificed for her, was just another mark in their con game. "I'm changing my will," grandmother said firmly, "leaving everything to you, and I'm filing a report about their attempted financial elder abuse. This recording should be enough to start an investigation." "Grandmother, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do," she interrupted. "I failed Dorothy somewhere along the way. Maybe I gave her too much or not enough, but I won't let her destroy you too. You built something beautiful from nothing, Winifred. Don't let them take it." On the drive back, I felt the weight of generations of family dysfunction, but also for the first time, the power of having someone truly in my corner. Grandmother's evidence added another layer to our case, another proof of Gary and Dorothy's pattern of targeting family members for financial gain. That evening, I got an unexpected call from Jessica, my childhood best friend. We'd grown apart when Dorothy had told her I'd said horrible things about her, lies I'd only discovered years later. "Winifred, I need to tell you something," Jessica said nervously. "Your mom contacted me yesterday. She offered me $5,000 to post things about you online. Said she needed character witnesses to say you've always been selfish and money-obsessed." "What did you tell her?" "I recorded the conversation and told her to go to hell," Jessica said. "I know I believed her lies before, but I've grown up since then. What she's doing is sick. I'll testify if you need me to." Another ally, another piece of evidence. Dorothy's desperation was creating a trail of witnesses. As midnight approached, marking the halfway point of Gary's 24-hour ultimatum, I sat in my office, surrounded by evidence. Credit fraud, bigamy, elder abuse, bribery, defamation. The list of their crimes grew longer by the hour. But I knew they had one more card to play. Whatever they'd been planning for 2 years, whatever their nuclear option was, it would come tomorrow. The question was whether I'd gathered enough ammunition to survive it. Sarah texted me from the flagship store. "All quiet here. Staff is ready for whatever tomorrow brings. We're with you." I looked around my office at awards from the Chamber of Commerce, photos with happy customers' letters from employees thanking me for opportunities. This was what I'd built. This was what they wanted to steal. 24 hours. Let them come. I was ready. At exactly 24 hours after Gary's ultimatum, I sat in the downtown police station filing a formal complaint for identity theft. The detective, a middle-aged woman named Martinez, reviewed the evidence with professional interest that sharpened into genuine concern as the scope became clear. "Whoa, 30,000 in fraudulent credit cards when you were 15, she read from the forensic report. "All maxed out, defaulted, sent to collections. This destroyed your credit before you were even an adult." I only discovered it recently when my forensic accountant started digging. I'd always wondered why my credit was so bad when I'd never had a credit card. Detective Martinez pulled up additional screens on her computer. "I can see the pattern. These accounts were opened systematically over 6 months, all with variations of your personal information. Your mother had access to your social security number, birth certificate, everything needed." "Will you press charges?" I asked, knowing this was the point of no return. With evidence, this clear, absolutely, identity theft is a felony, especially when perpetrated against a minor. I'll need a full statement and any additional documentation you have. As I provided my statement, Sarah texted urgently, "Tyler's here with a news crew, says he's doing an exclusive interview about family business disputes." A news crew, so this was their nuclear option. A media blitz to destroy me publicly before I could fight back legally. "I need to go," I told Detective Martinez, "but I'll provide whatever else you need." "We'll move quickly on this," she assured me. "With evidence this solid, we should have a warrant within 48 hours. I raced to the flagship store to find a circus outside. Tyler stood before cameras dressed in his best suit, playing the role of the wounded brother denied his birthright. A small crowd had gathered, including some regular customers. "My sister built this empire on the backs of family sacrifice," Tyler was saying as I approached. "While she hoards millions, our mother struggles to pay bills. I'm not asking for charity, I'm asking for fairness. Family businesses should benefit family." The reporter, a young woman clearly sympathetic to Tyler's sob story, nodded encouragingly. "What would you say to your sister if she were here?" "I'm right here," I said, stepping into frame. The reporter's eyes lit up at the unexpected drama. Tyler's confident mask slipped for a moment before he recovered. "Winifred," he said, playing to the cameras, "finally ready to talk instead of hiding behind lawyers." "I'm ready to tell the truth," I replied calmly, "starting with the fact that you've never worked a day in your life while I've been employed since I was 14. Should we discuss that?" "I was focused on education," Tyler protested. "Which college did you graduate from?" I asked. "Was it the first one you dropped out of, the second, or the third?" The crowd murmured. Several regular customers nodded, having seen my work ethic firsthand over the years. "This isn't about me," Tyler deflected. "It's about family loyalty, about sharing success. Like when I bought you a car for your 18th birthday, the one you crashed driving drunk 3 weeks later." The reporter sensed the narrative shifting. "Ms. Williams, are you saying you financially supported your family?" "Extensively," I confirmed, pulling out my phone. "I have receipts. $10,000 for a new roof on their house, $5,000 for Tyler's dental work, $15,000 for various emergencies over the years. Would you like to see the documentation?" Tyler's face reddened. "Those were gifts. They don't count against what you owe us." "What I owe you?" I laughed, surprising myself with how genuine it sounded. "Let's talk about what your family owes me. Should we start with the $30,000 in credit cards your mother fraudulently opened in my name when I was 15? The reporter's eyes widened. "Are you alleging identity theft?" "Not alleging, proving. I've just come from filing a police report with Detective Martinez. The evidence is overwhelming." Tyler stepped back, pulling out his phone, probably texting Gary for guidance. The crowd was growing, and the tide of public opinion was turning. "What about elder abuse?" I continued on a roll now. "Should we discuss how your parents have been pressuring my 86-year-old grandmother for a power of attorney so they can drain her accounts?" "You're lying," Tyler shouted, abandoning his polished persona. "I have recordings," I said simply, "your mother discussing with Gary how to leverage my grandmother's assets because, and I quote, 'she won't last much longer anyway.'" An elderly woman in the crowd gasped. "That's horrible," she said loudly. "What kind of people plot against their own mother?" The reporter turned to Tyler. "Do you have a response to these allegations?" Tyler's phone rang. He answered it, and I could hear Gary's furious voice from 5 feet away. After a brief exchange, Tyler faced the camera again, but his confidence was shattered. "This interview is over," he said. "My family will be pursuing legal action against these slanderous claims." "Truth isn't slander," I called after him as he retreated. "And discovery is going to be very interesting." The reporter approached me as Tyler fled. "Ms. Williams, would you be willing to do a full interview about this situation?" "After the legal proceedings," and I said, "but I will say this. I built my business from nothing, working 100-hour weeks while my family enjoyed the fruits of my labor. Now that I've succeeded, they want to take it all. This isn't about family, it's about greed. The crowd dispersed, many stopping to assure me of their support. Mrs. Chen, clutching her weekly coffee cake, patted my arm. We know who you are, dear. We've watched you work yourself to the bone for years. Don't let them steal your dream. Inside the store, my staff broke into spontaneous applause. Marcus grinned. That was beautiful. Tyler looked like he was gonna cry. It's not over, I warned. This was just their opening move. They'll escalate now. As if on cue, Amanda called, Winifred, I've got good news and bad news. Good news, the judge denied their request for an emergency injunction to freeze your assets. Bad news, they've amended their lawsuit. They're now claiming Gary was a silent partner in your business from the beginning. Based on what? They're alleging verbal agreements, consulting services, and initial investment. It's fiction, but they're swearing to it in court documents. That's perjury if we can prove it's false. We can prove it. I have every financial record from day one. Gary never gave me a penny. Perfect. Also, your grandmother's elder abuse complaint triggered an adult protective services investigation. They take financial exploitation of elderly people very seriously. The day continued with small victories. 3 employees who'd been approached by Tyler called to report his job offers, providing written documentation of his promises. 2 suppliers confirmed they'd been contacted by Gary, but had refused to discuss my accounts with him. The bakery's social media, which had been flooded with negative comments, began filling with support from real customers sharing their experiences. Sarah compiled a powerful report. Despite the chaos, our sales were recovering. The morning's media confrontation had actually helped, with many customers coming in specifically to show support. That evening, I met with my core team, the managers who'd been with me longest. We developed a comprehensive strategy to document everything, protect our recipes and procedures, and ensure business continuity no matter what happened legally. What if they do manage to force their way in? Marcus asked. What if some judge believes their lies? Then we make sure there's nothing left to steal, I said. Every recipe, every procedure, every innovation. We document it all as my personal intellectual property, predating any of their claims. If they want the buildings and equipment, fine. But the heart of this business is knowledge, and that stays with me. We worked until midnight, creating encrypted backups of everything that made our bakery special. Customer lists, supplier relationships, proprietary recipes, training manuals. The accumulated knowledge of 7 years of innovation and refinement. As we finished, Emma texted with new information. Found more victims in Nevada. 2 former business partners of Gary's willing to testify about his pattern of theft. 1 has recordings of Gary bragging about his methods. The web was widening. Every thread we pulled revealed more corruption, more victims, more evidence of a pattern spanning decades. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Just after midnight, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. The voice was female, nervous, and familiar. Winifred, this is Linda Henderson, Gary's wife, his real wife. I think it's time we talked. My heart raced. The woman Gary had abandoned, the one he'd never divorced, was reaching out. I've been following the news, Linda continued. Saw the interview today. I recognized Tyler. He looks just like his half-siblings. Gary always did have a type when it came to women he could manipulate. You've been watching this unfold for years. I knew he'd moved on to another family, another con. I kept quiet because, well, it was easier than fighting him. But seeing what he's doing to you, seeing Tyler turned into a carbon copy of his father, I can't stay silent anymore. What can you tell me that... Linda's laugh was bitter. Everything. 15 years of marriage, 2 kids, and a masterclass in how Gary operates. Did you know he's done this exact same thing 3 times before the family business takeover? It's his signature move. Would you be willing to testify? I'll do better than that. I've got documents, recordings, Evidence from his previous cons that show a clear pattern. My lawyer has been building a case for years, waiting for him to surface somewhere we could pin him down. Your lawsuit might be the opportunity we've been waiting for. We arranged to meet in person later in the week. As I hung up, I felt the tide turning decisively. Gary and Dorothy had opened this war, but they underestimated their opponent. They thought I was still the scared teenager working double shifts just to survive. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The family fracture began with a phone call at 7 in the morning. My Aunt Martha, Dorothy's younger sister, had always been the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over conflicts at holiday dinners and made excuses for bad behavior. But her voice carried a different tone now. "Winifred, I need to apologize," she began without preamble. "Dorothy came to me last month asking for money, said she needed it for medical bills. I gave her $5,000. My heart sank. Another victim. But yesterday, I ran into Gary at the bank. He was driving a new Lexus. When I asked about Dorothy's medical bills, he laughed and said she was fine. That's when I knew." "Aunt Martha, I'm so sorry." "No," she interrupted. "I'm sorry. I've enabled Dorothy's behavior for years, always making excuses. Did you know she borrowed $20,000 from our father before he died? Claimed it was for your college fund. Dad died thinking he had helped with your education." The revelation hit like a punch. My grandfather had passed when I was 16, and I'd always wondered why there was no inheritance, no college fund he'd always promised. Dorothy had stolen that too. "There's more," Martha continued. "I've been talking to other family members. Dorothy's been making the rounds for years, always with a sob story, always involving you somehow. Claims you refused to help with this or that, so she needs money. We're all comparing notes now." By noon, my phone was buzzing constantly with calls from extended family. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out with their own stories. Dorothy had borrowed $3,000 from cousin Eric for my emergency surgery, $5,000 from Uncle Robert for my legal troubles, each time spinning tales of my selfishness and my refusal to help, forcing them to step in. The irony was breathtaking. While I'd been working 18-hour days building my business, Dorothy had been building her own empire of lies, funded by family members who thought they were helping me. Uncle Robert's call was particularly revealing. "She came to me 2 years ago," he said, his voice thick with anger. "Said you'd gotten into debt with dangerous people, that she needed to pay them off to keep you safe. I gave her $8,000 and told her to get you help. 2 years ago, right when Tyler had said their plan started." "But here's what really makes me sick," Robert continued. "I saw Gary last year at a business conference. Mentioned I hoped you were doing better after your troubles. He had no idea what I was talking about. Played it off, but I could tell. They'd use that money for something else entirely." "Uncle Robert, I had no idea. I've never been in debt to anyone dangerous. I've never been in any legal trouble until now." "I know that now. Martha sent me the police report you filed, identity theft against your own daughter. That's when everything clicked. Dorothy didn't just lie about you. She's been stealing from all of us." The family network, once Dorothy's source of easy money, was turning into a witness list against her. But the most shocking call came from Tyler's ex-girlfriend Emma, who'd been coordinating with more victims. "I found someone you need to talk to," Emma said. "Her name is Patricia Chen. She was engaged to Gary 12 years ago before your mom. Same pattern. He moved in, started taking over her family's restaurant business, claimed he was modernizing it. When she caught him stealing, he disappeared overnight with $200,000 in cash and their customer database." Patricia Chen, no relation to my loyal customer, Mrs. Chen, but the similarity in targeting family businesses was chilling. I called her immediately. "I've been waiting for this call for years," Patricia said when I introduced myself. "I've kept tabs on Gary, watched him move from victim to victim. When I saw the news interview with his son, I knew he was at it again." "Why didn't you press charges back then?" Patricia's sigh was heavy with regret. "He was smart. Everything was in cash handshake deals, family trust. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd covered his tracks. No proof that would hold up in court, but I learned from it. I've been documenting everything since waiting for him to slip up. Do you have evidence from back then? Better. I have evidence of him bragging about it. 3 years after he left, he drunk dialed me from Vegas. Thought it was funny to tell me how he'd used my family's money to gamble. I recorded every word. Another recording. Another piece of the pattern. Gary wasn't just a con man. He was a serial predator who targeted family businesses using emotional manipulation and family bonds as weapons. That afternoon, Dorothy made her next move. She arrived at grandmother's assisted living facility with power of attorney papers and a notary. What she didn't know was that grandmother had installed a security camera in her room after their last visit, connected to an app I could monitor. I watched in real time as Dorothy played the devoted daughter voice dripping with false concern. "Mom, this is just to help manage things while you're here. Medical decisions, bills, that sort of thing. Nothing major." "I can manage my own affairs," grandmother said firmly. Dorothy's mask slipped. "Don't be stubborn. You're 86 years old. You need help whether you admit it or not." Like Winifred needed help, the kind that came with 30,000 in fraudulent credit cards. The silence was deafening. Dorothy's face went through several expressions before settling on injured innocence. "I don't know what lies she's been telling you." "I have the police report right here." Grandmother interrupted, pulling out the documentation I'd provided. "Identity theft, fraud, against your own daughter. And now you want me to sign over control of my finances. That's different. I'm trying to protect you." From what? From leaving my money to Winifred instead of funding Gary's schemes. Dorothy stood abruptly. "She's poisoned you against me. My own mother turned against me by that ungrateful—" "Get out," grandmother said quietly, "and don't come back without a genuine apology and a complete change of heart." Dorothy stormed out, leaving the unsigned papers behind. The notary, looking uncomfortable, muttered something about witnessing I attempted elder abuse and followed quickly. I called grandmother immediately. "Are you okay?" "Better than okay," she said, steel in her voice. "I've raised one daughter who became a thief and another granddaughter who became a success. I know which one deserves my support." That evening, family members began choosing sides publicly. Martha created a family group chat excluding Dorothy and Gary, where victims could share their experiences and evidence. The total amount Dorothy had extracted from family over the years exceeded $100,000, all under false pretenses. But the real shock came from Tyler. He showed up at my apartment at 9 that night, looking haggard and years older than his 21 years. For the first time since this began, he was alone. No Gary, no cameras, no bravado. "Can we talk?" he asked, and something in his voice made me let him in despite every instinct screaming danger. He sat on my couch, the same entitled posture gone replaced by something almost like vulnerability. "Mom and Gary are losing it," he began. "The house is chaos. They're screaming at each other, blaming each other. Mom found out about Linda and the kids in Nevada. And you're here because—" Tyler looked at me directly for perhaps the first time in years. "Because I heard them planning something bad. They're desperate now, talking about manufactured evidence, fake witnesses. Gary's calling in favors from people I don't think are entirely legal." "Why are you telling me this?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because Emma was right. I know she talked to you. She tried to warn me 2 years ago that Gary was using me, that this would end badly. I called her a gold digger and worse. But she was right about everything." "Tyler, are you actually having a moment of conscience, or is this another manipulation?" He laughed bitterly. "I don't blame you for not trusting me. I've been a spoiled brat my whole life. But sitting in that house, listening to them plan to destroy you with lies, watching Mom cry about Gary's other family while still plotting against you, I realized something." "What's that?" "They'll turn on me too eventually. When the money runs out, when the schemes fail, I'll be the next target. Gary's already mentioned how my credit is excellent, how we could leverage it for loans. The pattern repeating. The con man preparing his next victim, even his own son. What do you want, Tyler? I don't know, he admitted. I've been promised half your business for so long, I never thought about what I'd do if I didn't get it. I don't know how to work. I don't know how to build anything. I'm 21 and I'm nothing. It was the first honest thing I'd heard him say in years. If you really want to change, you need to make a choice. Are you with them or against them? Because there's no middle ground anymore. Tyler pulled out his phone, showing me a recording app. I've been recording them for the last day, ever since the news interview went bad. Gary doesn't know I have this. He played a portion, Gary's voice discussing bribing a health inspector to shut down my stores. Dorothy suggesting they plant evidence of health code violations. The casual criminality of it was chilling. I'll testify, Tyler said quietly. I'll provide these recordings, but I need something from you. Here it comes, I thought. The angle, the manipulation. I need a job, he continued. Not management, not ownership, entry level. I need to learn what actual work is, and I need to be away from them. I studied him, looking for the trick, but all I saw was a lost young man who just realized his parents were criminals and his promised future was built on lies. If you testify truthfully, if you provide those recordings to my lawyer, I'll consider it. But Tyler, if this is another scheme... It's not, he said firmly. I'm done being their puppet. I want to be something else, someone else. After he left, I sat in my apartment processing the day's revelations. The family was fracturing along lines of truth versus lies, victims versus perpetrators. Dorothy's decades of deception were unraveling, taking her relationship with Gary down with it. But Gary was escalating, planning actual crimes now. The recordings Tyler promised could be crucial, but could I trust him? Was this genuine redemption, or just another con learned at the master's knee? My phone buzzed with a message from Amanda. Motion hearing scheduled for next week. With all this new evidence, we're going to bury them. But Winifred, be careful. Cornered animals are dangerous. She was right. Gary and Dorothy had lost their financial resources, their family support, and potentially each other. They had nothing left to lose, which made them more dangerous than ever. But they'd also created their own downfall. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal had created a witness against them. The family they'd exploited was becoming the army that would defeat them. The war for my business was transforming into something larger. A reckoning for years of deception, a chance for justice, not just for me, but for everyone they'd hurt along the way. The courthouse steps were slick with morning rain as I climbed them, Amanda Chen at my side, and a folder thick with evidence in her hands. Today's hearing was for the restraining order, but it had become something much larger. Word had spread through the legal community about the scope of Dorothy and Gary's schemes, and the courtroom was packed with observers. Dorothy and Gary sat at the defendant's table, their body language speaking volumes. The united front they'd presented weeks ago was gone, replaced by a careful distance between their chairs. Gary's expensive suit couldn't hide the stress etched on his face, while Dorothy kept dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, though I suspected the tears were more performance than genuine emotion. Their new lawyer was a downgrade from their original counsel, a strip mall attorney who looked overwhelmed by the case files. Their first lawyer had withdrawn after learning about the identity theft charges, unwilling to risk his reputation on clients who'd lied to him. Judge Patricia Hawkins, known for her no-nonsense approach to family disputes that crossed into criminal territory, reviewed the petition with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Chen, she began, I've reviewed your petition for a restraining order. The evidence of harassment is substantial, but I'm more concerned about these allegations of identity theft and elder abuse. Has criminal prosecution begun? Amanda stood smoothly. Yes, Your Honor. Detective Martinez has filed charges for the identity theft. Adult Protective Services is investigating the attempted financial exploitation of Mrs. Williams' grandmother. We're seeking this restraining order to prevent further harassment while criminal proceedings move forward. I see here there's also mention of bigamy. Yes, Your Honor, we've discovered that Mr. Henderson, who goes by Gary Williams, is still legally married to Linda Henderson in Nevada. His marriage to Dorothy Williams is therefore invalid. I watched Dorothy's face crumble at the public declaration. Even after everything hearing it stated in open court hit differently, Gary didn't even look at her. The judge turned to the defense attorney. Mr. Kowalski, how do your clients respond to these allegations? Kowalski stood nervously. Your Honor, my clients deny all criminal wrongdoing. The disputes over business ownership are civil matters that should be resolved through negotiation, not restraining orders. As for the marriage issue, that's a private matter, unrelated to this petition. Is it? Judge Hawkins leaned forward. When someone commits fraud in their personal relationships, it speaks to credibility in all matters. But let's focus on the restraining order. I have affidavits here from 17 employees describing harassment by Tyler Williams. Security footage of vandalism that occurred shortly after Ms. Winifred Williams refused to sign over business interests. Recorded threats. Mr. Kowalski, how is this not clear grounds for a restraining order? My clients were merely exercising their right to free speech and family communication. By spray painting selfish daughter on Ms. Williams' place of business, the judge's tone could have frozen water. Amanda seized the moment. Your Honor, we have new evidence that speaks directly to the pattern of harassment and its escalation. She produced Tyler's recordings, legally obtained with his consent. The courtroom fell silent as Gary's voice filled the space, discussing bribing health inspectors and planting evidence. Dorothy's voice followed, suggesting ways to make Winifred see reason that sounded distinctly threatening. Dorothy shot to her feet. That's our son. He can't record us without permission. This is a violation of privacy. Oh, actually, Judge Hawkins said coolly, in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording. If your son consented to his own recordings, they're admissible. Sit down, Ms. Williams. The name confusion seemed to irritate the judge further, and let's address this name issue. Mr. Henderson, are you still legally married to Linda Henderson? Gary's attorney whispered urgently in his ear before he answered. I plead the Fifth Amendment. This isn't a criminal trial, Mr. Henderson, yet, but your refusal to answer speaks volumes. The judge turned back to Amanda. Continue with your evidence, counselor. Amanda presented the full scope of their harassment campaign methodically. The social media defamation, the attempts to turn suppliers and investors against me, the approaches to employees, the vandalism, the coordinated assault on my business reputation. Through your honor, Amanda continued. We also have evidence that Mr. Henderson has done this before. Patricia Chen is prepared to testify about an identical scheme 12 years ago targeting her family's restaurant business. Objection, Kowalski called out. Prior allegations are not relevant to this restraining order. They speak to pattern of behavior, Judge Hawkins ruled. I'll allow it. Patricia Chen took the stand composed and articulate. She detailed Gary's infiltration of her family business, the promises of modernization, the systematic theft of funds, and his sudden disappearance with cash and proprietary information. He told me I should be grateful, Patricia testified, that he was teaching me a valuable business lesson. He seemed to think destroying my family's legacy was amusing. Gary's facade cracked. He leaned over to whisper angrily to his attorney, who looked increasingly miserable. When Linda Henderson took the stand via video link from Nevada, the courtroom drama reached its peak. She appeared on the large screen, professional and calm despite the circumstances. Mrs. Henderson, Amanda began, can you state your relationship to Gary Henderson? I'm his legal wife. We married 18 years ago in Las Vegas. We have 2 children together, aged 16 and 14. Have you ever divorced? No, Gary abandoned us 11 years ago, but we never legally divorced. He sends money occasionally when I track him down and threaten legal action. Dorothy let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. The tissue dabbing increased dramatically. Were you aware he'd entered into another marriage ceremony with Dorothy Williams? I learned about it 3 years ago when my private investigator found him. I've been building a case for bigamy and abandonment since then. Judge Hawkins had heard enough. I'm granting the restraining order effective immediately. Mr. Henderson, Ms. Dorothy Williams, and Tyler Williams are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Winifred Williams, her places of business, her employees, or her residence. They are also prohibited from any form of contact, including through third-party social media or any electronic means. Or, Your Honor, Kowalski protested, Tyler Williams has already agreed to cooperate with Ms. Winifred Williams. He shouldn't be included. He can petition to have his name removed if his cooperation proves genuine, the judge ruled. But given the evidence of his participation in the harassment, he's included for now. But Judge Hawkins wasn't done. I'm also issuing a cease and desist order regarding any claims to ownership of Ms. Winifred Williams' business assets, pending resolution of the civil case. Any violation of these orders will result in immediate arrest and criminal contempt charges. Furthermore, she continued her gaze boring into Gary and Dorothy. I'm forwarding all evidence presented today to the district attorney's office with a recommendation for immediate prosecution on charges of fraud, conspiracy, harassment, and in Mr. Henderson's case, bigamy. Dorothy finally broke. This is all her fault, she screamed, pointing at me. She turned everyone against us. She's destroying our family. Ma'am, from what I've seen today, you've destroyed your family without any help from your daughter. One more outburst and you'll be held in contempt. Judge Hawkins' voice was ice. As we left the courtroom, Dorothy and Gary were escorted out separately to maintain the restraining order distance. Gary walked past without a glance, but Dorothy locked eyes with me, and for just a moment, I saw not the mother I'd once loved, but a stranger, consumed by greed and rage. Outside, Amanda was jubilant but cautious. This is a major victory, but they're cornered now. Desperate people do desperate things. Linda Henderson was waiting by the courthouse steps, having driven in for the hearing. In person, she was smaller than I'd expected, but her presence was commanding. Thank you for testifying, I said. I've been waiting 11 years for this moment, she replied. Gary destroyed my life, abandoned our children, and left us with nothing. Seeing him finally face justice, it's worth the drive. What will you do now? File for divorce, immediately pursue child support, and cooperate with any criminal prosecution. My children deserve to know their father is being held accountable. She paused. I'm sorry about your mother. She's as much his victim as anyone. I wasn't sure I agreed. Dorothy had been a willing participant, not an innocent victim. But Linda's grace in the face of abandonment was admirable. Tyler was waiting by my car looking younger than his 21 years. The restraining order included him, which meant he was risking arrest just being near me. I know I'm not supposed to be here, he said quickly. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. I'll stay away, follow the order. But my offer stands. When this is over, if you'll let me prove myself, I want to learn what real work means. I studied him for a moment. Follow the order, testify truthfully, then we'll see. He nodded and walked away, shoulders slumped, but something like determination in his stride. That evening, the family group chat Martha had created was buzzing with updates from the hearing. Support poured in from relatives who'd been victims of Dorothy's schemes. Several offered to testify in the civil trial about the money they'd given her under false pretenses. But the biggest surprise came from grandmother. She'd hired her own attorney and filed a civil suit against Dorothy and Gary for attempted financial elder abuse. At 86, she was taking her own stand against the daughter who'd tried to steal her final years of independence. I should have done this years ago, grandmother told me over the phone. I enabled Dorothy's behavior by always forgiving, always making excuses. No more. She needs to face consequences. As I sat in my office that night reviewing the day's victories, I felt the shift in momentum. The restraining order was more than legal protection. It was validation that their actions were criminal, not just family drama. But Amanda's warning echoed in my mind. Cornered animals are dangerous. Gary had lost his facade of respectability. Dorothy had lost her family support network. They had nothing left but rage and desperation. The question was, what would they do with it? The story broke at 6:30 in the morning with a notification on my phone. Local business owner fights back against family fraud scheme. The reporter from the confrontation with Tyler had done her homework, and the article was thorough, devastating, and completely accurate. By 7, my phone was ringing nonstop. Local news wanted interviews. Business journals wanted statements. The story of a successful entrepreneur defending her company against predatory family members had struck a chord, especially with the added elements of identity theft, bigamy, and elder abuse. "Winifred, you need to see this," Sarah said, rushing into my office with her tablet. "The article's gone viral, 20,000 shares in the last hour." The comments section was a battlefield. Supporters shared their own stories of family members trying to claim ownership of their successes. Critics accused me of airing dirty laundry for publicity, but the overwhelming sentiment was outrage at Dorothy and Gary's schemes. Then came the investigative journalists, a producer from a national morning show called wanting to feature the story as part of a series on family financial abuse. A documentary filmmaker reached out about following the case. Everyone wanted to know how a mother could steal her teenage daughter's identity and try to steal her business. By noon, the situation had escalated beyond anything I'd imagined. Former employees of Gary's failed real estate ventures were coming forward with their own horror stories. A Facebook group called Gary Henderson's Victims had formed with dozens of members sharing experiences spanning 2 decades. The most damaging revelation came from a former secretary at Gary's company. She posted copies of emails where Gary had discussed his business model of targeting women with successful children or elderly parents. Find the weakness, one email read. "Money flows through family bonds. Use them." Dorothy tried to fight back on social media, posting tearful videos about being persecuted by her ungrateful daughter. But for every supportive comment she received, 10 others posted evidence of her lies. Screenshots of her various fundraising attempts, contradictory stories, and manipulation tactics flooded her pages. At 2 in the afternoon, something unexpected happened. A news van pulled up to my flagship store, but instead of seeking an interview, they were broadcasting live from inside. Tyler was there, wearing an apron mopping floors. "What's happening?" I asked Marcus, who was managing the location. "He showed up this morning with a work permit application," Marcus explained, looking bewildered. "Said he wanted to start immediately, restraining order or not." I was about to call the police when the news crew arrived. Apparently, he called them. On the screen, Tyler was being interviewed while continuing to mop. "I realized I've never worked an honest day in my life," he was saying. "My parents promised me half of my sister's business, something I didn't earn, didn't build, didn't deserve. I want to change that. I want to learn what real work means." "But there's a restraining order," the reporter pointed out. "You could be arrested for being here." "I know," Tyler said simply. "I'm hoping my sister will see this as a genuine attempt to make amends and modify the order. If not, I'll face the consequences. But I need to start somewhere, and this is where I learned all the wrong lessons. Maybe it's where I can learn the right ones." The cynical part of me wondered if this was just another manipulation, a public relations move to gain sympathy. But watching him struggle with the mop sweat on his forehead from actual physical labor, something seemed different. I called Amanda. "Can we modify the restraining order to allow him to work at one specific location under supervision?" If you're willing, we can file an emergency motion. But Winifred, are you sure about this? I thought about second chances about the family members who'd reached out with apologies and support. He testified truthfully. He provided evidence. Maybe he deserves a chance to prove himself. While Amanda prepared the modification, larger events were unfolding. The IRS had launched a formal investigation into Gary's businesses based on evidence provided by the forensic accountant and former employees. 3 more of his victims had filed civil suits. The Nevada authorities were moving forward with bigamy charges. But the real bombshell came at 4 in the afternoon. Dorothy's employer, a medical billing company where she'd worked for 5 years, released a statement. They discovered discrepancies in accounts. She managed patients who'd been double billed with the extra payments diverted. She'd been terminated and criminal charges were being pursued. The scope of her theft was staggering. Beyond what she'd taken from family and attempted to take from me, she'd been stealing from cancer patients, cardiac surgery survivors, people at their most vulnerable, the very people I served at my bakery locations near hospitals. My phone rang. It was Dorothy calling from a number I didn't recognize, violating the restraining order. "Are you happy now?" she screamed before I could hang up. "You've destroyed everything I have. Nothing—" "You did this to yourself," I said, knowing I should hang up but needing to say it. "Every lie, every theft, every betrayal, those were your choices. I gave you life, I raised you. You owe me everything. You stole my identity when I was 15. You calculated the cost of raising me like I was an investment property. You tried to steal my grandmother's life savings. What kind of mother does that? The kind who sacrificed everything and got nothing in return? You got love. You got support. You got chance after chance. It was never enough because you don't see people, you see opportunities. You don't have relationships, you have marks." The line went silent for a moment. When Dorothy spoke again, her voice was different, colder. "You have no idea what Gary's capable of, what he has planned. You think you've won. This isn't over." She hung up before I could respond. I immediately reported the contact to Amanda and the police, but her words lingered. What was Gary planning? The answer came that evening. Marcus called from the Riverside location, panic in his voice. "There's been an accident. Maybe not an accident. The main oven exploded. No one was hurt, but the fire department is saying it looks like sabotage." I rushed to the scene to find firefighters still working. The kitchen was destroyed, thousands of dollars and equipment ruined. The fire chief pulled me aside. "We found evidence of tampering with the gas lines," he said quietly. "This was deliberate. Do you know anyone who might want to harm your business?" I provided Gary's information and explained the situation. The chief's expression grew grim. "We've seen this before. Business dispute escalates to property damage. You need to increase security at all locations immediately." As I stood looking at the destroyed kitchen, where I'd personally trained dozens of employees, where we developed some of our signature recipes, rage replaced fear. Gary had escalated to actual destruction, from financial warfare to physical attacks on my business. But he'd miscalculated. The community response was immediate and overwhelming. Competitors offered use of their kitchens during off hours. Suppliers extended credit terms. Customers started a GoFundMe that raised $50,000 in 6 hours. The headline changed from family drama to community rallying around a local business under attack. Tyler appeared at the scene, still in his work apron, defying the restraining order again. But instead of grandstanding, he quietly joined the cleanup crew, hauling debris and sweeping glass. When reporters tried to interview him, he waved them off. "I'm just here to help. This is my sister's life's work. Family should protect that, not destroy it." That night, the modified restraining order was approved. Tyler could work at one location under supervision with regular check-ins with the court. It was a small step, but it was something. As I finally made it home after midnight, exhausted and covered in soot from the cleanup, I found an unexpected gathering. My core managers, loyal customers, family members who'd sided with me, even some of Gary's former victims. They'd all congregated at my apartment building. "We're not letting you face this alone," Mrs. Chen said, holding a casserole. "We're setting up a watch schedule. Someone will be with you at all times until these criminals are behind bars." Looking at the crowd of supporters, people whose lives had been touched by my business, by the community we'd built together, I realized Dorothy and Gary had failed to understand something fundamental. They thought my business was just about money, assets to be stolen, profits to be divided. But it was so much more. It was jobs for single parents, gathering places for communities, fresh bread for hospital workers, pulling double shifts. It was the teenage employee saving for college, the veteran who found purpose in our delivery runs, the grandmother who came every Tuesday for coffee and conversation. They tried to steal not just a business, but a community, and communities fight back. "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking for the first time since this began. "Thank you all." As supporters set up their watch schedule and shared stories of how the bakery had touched their lives, my phone buzzed with a message from Amanda, district attorney filing charges tomorrow. Fraud, conspiracy, extortion, and now arson. Gary and Dorothy's crime spree ends here. The war for my business was entering its final phase, but now I wasn't fighting alone. The forensic accountant's final report arrived on a Thursday morning that felt heavier than its 67 pages should have warranted. Margaret Liu, the expert Amanda had hired, sat across from me in my office, her expression grim as she walked me through findings that made my stomach turn. Gary Henderson has been running a sophisticated fraud scheme for over 15 years. She began pulling up charts on her laptop. He currently owes approximately $800,000 across various creditors, tax authorities, and former business partners. 800,000. I repeated the number, almost incomprehensible. "That's just what we can document," Margaret continued. "There are likely cash transactions under the table dealings and offshore accounts we haven't found yet. But here's the most relevant part for your case. In the last 2 years, as his debts mounted, he and Dorothy began actively planning to acquire your business." She showed me a timeline that made everything crystal clear. 2 years ago, Gary's largest real estate development had failed spectacularly, leaving investors empty-handed and contractors unpaid. That's when the questions about my business had started. The sudden interest in my expansion plans, the calculated recording of conversations. "They were grooming you," Margaret said bluntly. "Every interaction was designed to gather information, build their case for ownership claims, and position themselves for a takeover when the time was right." "What about Dorothy's theft from her employer?" Margaret pulled up another screen. $63,000 stolen over 3 years through false billing schemes. She was careful, small amounts that flew under the radar. But when we provided the pattern to her employer, it became obvious. The IRS investigation had uncovered even more. Gary had been claiming massive business losses on properties he'd transferred between his shell companies at inflated values, avoiding taxes while living a lifestyle funded by debt and fraud. The actual tax bill with penalties and interest exceeded $300,000. "He's been playing a shell game," Margaret explained, "moving money between accounts, using new victims to pay off old ones, always staying one step ahead of complete collapse. Your business represented his biggest potential score, a legitimate, profitable enterprise he could drain or leverage for more loans." That afternoon, the criminal consequences began falling like dominoes. I was at the rebuilt Riverside location when the calls started coming. First, from Amanda. Dorothy had been arrested at their home for theft from her employer and violation of the restraining order. Then from Detective Martinez, Gary had been picked up trying to board a flight to Mexico with a fake ID and $30,000 in cash. But the biggest shock came from the bank. Robert Hutchinson, my business banker, called with news that made me sink into my chair. Winifred, I need to inform you of something. During our internal investigation prompted by recent events, we discovered Gary Henderson attempted to access your business accounts using forged documents. He had paperwork claiming to be a authorized signatory. Oh, when was this? 6 weeks ago, before your family meeting. Our security protocols caught it, but we didn't initially connect it to you. The attempt was made at a branch across town using sophisticated forgeries. 6 weeks ago, before I'd refused to sign over my business, they'd already been trying to steal it through fraud before resorting to family pressure. We've turned everything over to the FBI, Robert continued. Bank fraud is a federal crime. They're very interested in Mr. Henderson's activities. The FBI. This had escalated beyond family drama, beyond local crime. Gary had made himself a federal target. That evening, Tyler proved his commitment in an unexpected way. He arrived at my office with boxes of documents. Years of his parents' financial records he'd been secretly copying since the truth came out. I started gathering these after the recording, he explained, setting them on my desk. Every bank statement, every tax return I could find, every business document. I knew they'd try to destroy evidence once things got bad. Tyler, this could be considered theft. Wow, of documents proving their theft, he countered. I'm done protecting criminals just because they're my parents. Look at this. He pulled out a folder marked Winifred Acquisition Strategy, dated 2 years ago. Inside were photos of my store's employee schedules. They'd somehow obtained supplier information, even customer traffic analyses. They'd been stalking my business like predators studying prey. There's more, Tyler said quietly. Dad has a storage unit. He thinks I don't know about it, but I followed him once. If patterns hold, that's where he keeps the real records, the ones showing where the money actually went. We called Amanda immediately. Within hours, she'd obtained a warrant for the storage unit based on Tyler's testimony and the evidence he'd provided. What they found there changed everything. The storage unit was a museum of fraud, boxes of doctored contracts, fake business licenses, correspondence with victims going back 20 years. But the most damning discovery was a ledger handwritten by Gary, detailing every con, every victim, every dollar stolen. He'd kept a running tally like a twisted scorecard. My name appeared 18 months ago with a note, primary target, estimated value $5 to $8 million, approach family bonds, emotional manipulation, legal pressure if necessary. Below that, a list of my employees marked as vulnerable to recruitment, my suppliers rated by likelihood of cooperation, my investors assessed for pressure points. It was a complete battle plan for destroying me and taking everything I'd built. The district attorney, Patricia Reeves, called a meeting that included the FBI, IRS, and multiple victims. The conference room was packed with people Gary and Dorothy had defrauded over the years. We're looking at multiple federal charges, Reeves announced. Bank fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, and that's just the start. With state charges including identity theft, elder abuse, and fraud. Both defendants are facing potential sentences of 20 to 30 years. 20 to 30 years. Dorothy would be in her 80s when she got out. Gary even older. We're offering plea deals to both defendants, Reeves continued, but only if they provide full restitution to victims and complete cooperation in recovering hidden assets. Otherwise, we go to trial with maximum charges. Linda Henderson spoke up from her seat. What about bigamy charges? Nevada has agreed to prosecute separately. Mr. Henderson faces additional charges there. After the meeting, victims gathered in small groups sharing stories and contact information. The couple who'd lost their retirement savings to one of Gary's real estate schemes. The small business owner who'd been driven to bankruptcy by his consulting. The elderly woman who'd signed over her house deed under false pretenses. He told me I was stupid for not seeing the opportunity, one victim said. made me feel like a fool for questioning him. Classic con artist behavior. Make the victim blame themselves. That's what Dorothy had done to me my whole life. Made me feel guilty for succeeding selfish, for not sharing what I'd earned ungrateful, for protecting what was mine. The patterns were so clear now, the manipulation so obvious in hindsight. Bank records subpoenaed by the FBI revealed the full scope of their desperation. In the weeks before confronting me, Gary had maxed out every credit card taken payday loans, even pawned Dorothy's jewelry. They were down to their last few $1,000s when they'd made their move on my business. They were betting everything on you capitulating, Amanda explained. When you said no, they had no backup plan except escalation. The fire at my Riverside location was traced definitively to Gary through security footage from a nearby building and accelerant purchased with his credit card. Arson charges were added to his growing list of crimes. But in the midst of all this destruction, something beautiful was happening. Tyler working shifts at the bakery while cooperating with authorities was transforming. He'd gone from entitled and lazy to hardworking and humble. Customers who'd initially treated him with suspicion began warming to his genuine efforts to make amends. "He's actually not bad," Marcus told me after Tyler's second week. "Shows up early, stays late, doesn't complain about any task. Yesterday, he spent 3 hours perfecting dinner rolls, said he wanted to understand what real achievement felt like." One afternoon, I found Tyler in the kitchen after hours practicing bread shaping techniques. His hands were covered in flour, his face focused with concentration I'd never seen from him before. "Why are you still here?" I asked. "Your shift ended 2 hours ago." He looked up, embarrassment flashing across his face. "I wanted to master this. Sarah said muscle memory only comes from repetition. I've wasted 21 years. I can't afford to waste any more time." "Tyler, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupted. "Do you know what it's like to realize your whole life has been a lie, that every promise made to you was built on theft from others? I need to build something real, something earned, even if it's just the ability to shape dough properly." I watched him return to his work, this young man who'd been raised to be a predator, choosing instead to become a builder. Maybe redemption was possible after all. That evening, as I reviewed the financial reports showing my business had not only survived but grown stronger through the crisis, I got a call from the district attorney. "Both defendants want to meet with you," Reeves said. "Dorothy and Gary separately. They're considering plea deals and their lawyers think personal appeals might help. You're under no obligation to see them. See the people who'd tried to destroy me, who'd stolen from me before I was even an adult, who'd attacked everything I'd built." "I'll think about it," I said. But I already knew my answer. I would see them, not for their sake, but for mine. I needed to look them in the eyes and let them see what they'd failed to break. Let them understand that their greatest con had failed not because of lawyers or evidence, but because they'd underestimated the strength of someone who'd learned to fight for herself long before they'd shown their true faces. The financial reckoning was complete. 800,000 in debts, dozens of victims, decades of fraud exposed. Gary and Dorothy had built an empire of lies, and it had collapsed entirely, taking them down with it. But from those ashes, something new was rising. A stronger business, a united community, and maybe, just maybe, a family rebuilt on truth instead of manipulation. The federal courthouse in downtown looked imposing against the gray October sky as I walked through security. Dorothy had been in custody for 2 weeks, and this would be our first face-to-face meeting since her arrest. My palms were damp, but my resolve was steady. Amanda had advised against this meeting, but I needed closure that only confrontation could provide. Dorothy sat in the attorney conference room wearing orange jail clothing that made her look older, smaller, defeated. Her expensive highlights had grown out, revealing gray roots that matched the pallor of her face. When she saw me, something flickered in her eyes. Hope maybe, or calculation. Old habits die hard. 15 minutes, the guard said before stepping outside. We sat across from each other at the metal table, years of complicated history compressed into silence. She spoke first. You look good, she said, her voice hoarse. Success suits you. I'm not here for small talk, Dorothy. The use of her first name made her flinch. I'm still your mother. No, I said firmly. A mother protects her child. She doesn't steal her identity, destroy her credit, and try to take everything she's built. You're my biological parent, nothing more. Her hands clenched on the table. I made mistakes. Crimes. You committed crimes. Against me, against your mother, against sick patients who trusted your employer. These weren't mistakes. They were choices. Everything I did was for our family. For Gary, for Tyler, never for me. I was just the resource to be exploited. I pulled out a photo from my wallet. Myself at 15 working at the grocery store. This girl worked 60 hours a week while you were opening credit cards in her name. She thought she was saving for college. She had no idea her mother had already sabotaged her future. Dorothy's composure cracked. You don't understand what it was like. Gary had such plans, such vision. He said if we could just get enough capital. He's a con man, has been for 20 years. You knew it and chose him anyway. I loved him. You loved what he promised, the lifestyle, the easy money, the fantasy that you were building something together. You loved that more than you loved your own daughter. Tears ran down her face, but I'd seen her tears before. They'd extracted thousands from family members over the years. The district attorney says I could get 15 years, she whispered. 15 years, Winifred. I'll be an old woman when I get out. Aunt Martha gave you $5,000 for my medical bills that didn't exist. Uncle Robert gave $8,000 for my fictional legal troubles. Grandmother nearly signed over power of attorney so you could drain her accounts. Those elderly patients you stole from, some of them were cancer survivors, cardiac patients, people fighting for their lives while you were padding billing statements. What sentence do they deserve? I never meant... You meant every bit of it. Every lie, every theft, every manipulation was deliberate. I leaned forward. But here's what really gets me. You recorded our conversations for 2 years. Every moment I thought we were rebuilding our relationship, every vulnerable confession, every fear I shared, you were gathering ammunition. Her shoulders shook. For the first time since this began, the tears seemed real. I destroyed everything, didn't I? Yes, you did. Tyler won't see me, says he's done with both of us. My own son is trying to become someone better than what you raised him to be. He's working minimum wage learning what honest labor means. He's testifying against you and Gary not for revenge, but for justice. He's choosing to break the cycle. Can you forgive me? The question hung in the air. I'd thought about this moment, planned what I'd say, but sitting across from her, I found only truth. Forgiveness isn't mine to give. It belongs to everyone you hurt. But I can tell you this, I survived you. I built something beautiful despite your sabotage. I have a community that supports me, a business that thrives on integrity, and a future you can't touch. That's my victory. The guard knocked. Time was up. As I stood to leave, Dorothy grabbed my hand. I do love you. In my broken, selfish way, I do. I pulled my hand free. Love isn't words, Dorothy. It's actions. And every action you've taken has been poison. I walked out without looking back. 3 days later, it was Gary's turn. He'd been denied bail as a flight risk and was being held in federal detention. The man I faced bore little resemblance to the confident manipulator who'd threatened me months ago. His expensive suits were replaced with jail gray, his salon tan faded to prison pallor. But his arrogance remained intact. Come to gloat, he asked as I sat down. Come to understand. How does someone become so comfortable destroying lives? Gary laughed a bitter sound. Destroying, I was building. Every deal, every opportunity. I was building empires. Not my fault they collapsed. They collapsed because they were built on lies and theft. They collapsed because people like you don't understand vision. Your little bakery chain amateur hour, I could have turned it into a national franchise, made us all rich. With what money you're 800,000 in debt. His face darkened. Temporary setbacks. I've come back from worse. No, you haven't. You've just found new victims each time. Patricia Chen, the Riverside Development investors. My mother. How many lives have you ruined? Your mother was a willing partner. She knew the game. She was a mark just like the others. You targeted her because she had a successful daughter and an elderly mother with assets. Classic con artist pattern. Find the vulnerability, exploit the relationships. For the first time, his mask slipped. You've been talking to Linda. Your actual wife, yes. She told me about your sons. 16 and 14 now? Do they know their father is a serial fraud artist? Don't bring them into this. You brought them into it when you abandoned them, when you chose crime over child support, when you created another fake family while they grew up fatherless. Gary's hands clenched into fists. Those boys are better off without me. The first honest thing you've said. What do you want? Winifred, an apology, a confession I'm facing 25 years federal time plus whatever Nevada throws at me. You've won. I want to know why. You're clearly intelligent. You could have built legitimate businesses. Why choose fraud? He leaned back, considering. Because legitimate takes time. It takes work. It takes accepting small wins instead of big scores. I wanted more. And now you have nothing. Now I have clarity, he said, surprising me. 25 years to think about every shortcut that led here. Your mother, Tyler, even you. You were all just means to an end. But the end never came, did it? Just more schemes, more lies, more running. Was any of it real? The family dinners, the birthday celebrations, 17 years of playing father and partner. Real is relative. I played the part required for the long game. The casual cruelty of it made my stomach turn. Dorothy, for all her faults, had loved him. Tyler had idolized him. They'd been props in his performance supporting cast in the story where he was always the misunderstood genius one deal away from greatness. Linda's filing for divorce, I told him. She's coming after 17 years of back child support with interest. The IRS wants $300,000. Your victims are lining up for restitution. Even if you get out in 20 years, you'll have nothing waiting but debt and anonymity. We'll see, he said, but the bravado was hollow. As I left the federal detention center, I felt empty rather than vindicated. These were broken people who'd chosen to break others rather than fix themselves. No confrontation could change that. No words could undo the damage they'd caused. But justice was moving forward. The following week brought a flurry of legal proceedings. Dorothy, on advice of counsel, pleaded guilty to identity theft, elder abuse, conspiracy, and fraud. Her sentence, 12 years federal, 3 years state to run, concurrently with restitution to all victims, including $63,000 to her former employer and $30,000 to me for the identity theft. Gary fought harder, but lost bigger. Found guilty on all federal charges, he received 25 years, plus 5 years in Nevada for bigamy and abandonment. The judge, citing his complete lack of remorse and pattern of victimization, recommended no early release. Mr. Henderson, the judge said at sentencing, you are a predator who used family relationships as hunting grounds. The damage you've caused is immeasurable, not just in dollars, but in destroyed trust and broken lives. Society needs protection from individuals like you. Tyler testified at both trials, steady and honest despite visible pain. He detailed the grooming, the promises, the training and manipulation he'd received from birth. His testimony helped establish the pattern of conspiracy and long-term planning that elevated the charges. After Gary's sentencing, Tyler found me outside the courthouse. I know I'm not supposed to contact you. The restraining order was modified. Remember, you're allowed to talk to me at work and legal proceedings. Right. He struggled for words. Seeing them in chains, hearing the sentences. I should feel something more. Sadness lost anything, but I just feel free. Well, freedom can feel empty at first, I offered. You're mourning the parents you thought you had, not the criminals they turned out to be. The bakery helps, he said. Having somewhere to go, something real to do. Marcus is teaching me inventory management. Sarah's showing me customer service. It's like learning to be human from scratch. You're doing well. The dinner rolls you made yesterday were actually sellable. His face lit up with pride that would have seemed foreign on him months ago. Really, I mean, I know they're basic, but nothing. You're learning a trade, developing skills, building something honest. That's everything. As we parted ways, him to his shift and me to my office, I reflected on the strange paths justice takes. Dorothy and Gary would spend decades in prison, their empire of lies completely dissolved. Their victims would receive restitution, though money could never fully repair the damage done. But perhaps the truest justice was in transformation. Tyler choosing work over theft, the community rallying around honesty over manipulation. My business thriving on principles Dorothy and Gary could never understand. Integrity, hard work, genuine connection. That evening, I stood in my flagship bakery as the dinner rush began. The aroma of fresh bread filled the air. Customers chatted with staff who'd become friends. Tyler worked the register patient with an elderly customer counting change, no trace of his former entitlement. My phone buzzed with a text from grandmother. Saw the news. Justice at last. Now let's focus on healing. She was right. The criminal consequences had been served. The legal battles were ending. Now came the harder work of moving forward, building new on the ashes of old betrayal. Through the window, I caught my reflection. Tired but unbroken, successful despite sabotage, surrounded by the community that had become my true family. Dorothy and Gary had tried to steal everything from me. Instead, they'd revealed how much I'd already won. The unraveling happened faster than anyone expected. Within days of their sentencing, Dorothy and Gary turned on each other with a viciousness that shocked even seasoned prosecutors. From their separate cells, they began filing motions accusing the other of being the mastermind, each claiming to be the manipulated victim of their partner's schemes. Amanda called me with updates that read like a soap opera written by lawyers. Gary's claiming Dorothy orchestrated everything, that he was just following her lead to keep the family together. Dorothy's saying Gary controlled and manipulated her for 17 years, that she was essentially his hostage. They're both lying, I said. Obviously, but their mutual destruction is providing incredible evidence. They're so eager to blame each other, they're confessing to crimes we didn't even know about. The first bombshell came from Dorothy's deposition. Trying to paint Gary as the sole villain, she revealed he'd been siphoning money from her accounts for years. But in doing so, admitted she knew the money came from fraudulent sources. He said it was from his real estate deals. She testified, but I knew better. I saw the victims' names on the checks. I just didn't want to know. Gary's response was even more damaging. He provided investigators with Dorothy's project files, detailed plans she'd kept for extracting money from various family members, complete with psychological profiles and manipulation strategies. She studied them like lab rats, Gary told investigators, knew exactly which buttons to push. The grandmother's guilt about Dorothy's childhood, the aunt's need to be seen as generous, even had a file on Winifred from when she was 12, noting her work ethic could be exploited. The file on me was chilling. Notes dating back to my adolescence. Strong need for maternal approval. Exploit. Saves money obsessively. Indicates fear of poverty that can be leveraged. Isolated from peers due to work schedule. Increased dependence on family. But their mutual destruction reached its peak when the IRS found Gary's hidden Nevada accounts during Dorothy's helpful testimony about his financial crimes. In those accounts was evidence of him preparing to flee, not just from law enforcement, but from Dorothy herself. He had new identity documents, Detective Martinez told me, passport, driver's license, credit cards all under the name Graham Harrison, tickets to Costa Rica dated 2 days after your initial refusal to sign over the business. He was planning to run with whatever money they could squeeze from you and leave Dorothy to take the fall. When Dorothy learned about the escape plan during a prosecutor's meeting, her remaining composure shattered. The woman who'd spent years crafting elaborate lies finally told the truth, and it was devastating. She revealed Gary's other victims they'd been blackmailing, business partners from failed ventures who'd been threatened with exposure of personal secrets, former romantic targets who'd paid for silence about embarrassing affairs. The scope was staggering. "We lived well," Dorothy admitted in a recorded session, her voice flat with defeat. "The house, the cars, Tyler's private schools, none of it from legitimate income. It was all stolen money or blackmail payments. I told myself successful people bent rules, that this was how the game was played." The FBI added racketeering charges to their case. What had started as family fraud had revealed itself as an organized criminal enterprise spanning years and states. Meanwhile, Tyler was processing these revelations while building his new life. I found him one evening sitting in the bakery's break room reading transcripts from his parents' testimonies that had been made public. "They had a file on me too," he said quietly, "strategies for keeping me dependent, ensuring I'd never develop skills or confidence. They called it asset management." "Tyler, I'm sorry." "Don't be. I need to know this. Need to understand how thoroughly they programmed me for failure." He showed me a page where Dorothy had written about purposely sabotaging his college applications to highly ranked schools. She told me I wasn't smart enough for those places, made me believe it, but really she was afraid I'd succeed without them. The revelations kept coming. Gary's business connections began distancing themselves rapidly but not quickly enough. Several found themselves under investigation for their roles in various schemes. The network of corruption he'd built over decades collapsed like dominoes, each fallen piece revealing new crimes. His Nevada family emerged from the shadows with their own lawsuit. Linda Henderson, empowered by his incarceration, revealed the full extent of his abandonment. Their sons, now teenagers, submitted impact statements about growing up without financial support, while their father lived lavishly with his fake family. He sent $200 once, the older son wrote, "For my 10th birthday. Mom cried because we needed it for rent. I thought my dad must be poor too, finding out he was living in a 5-bedroom house with another family while we got evicted twice. I don't have words for that betrayal." Dorothy's elderly mother, my grandmother, filed her own civil suit with documentation going back years. Canceled checks Dorothy had stolen, forged signatures on loan documents, credit cards opened using grandmother's information. The total exceeded $200,000. Dorothy had been systematically draining her mother's retirement funds while playing the dutiful daughter. "I suspected," grandmother told me during one of our weekly lunches, "but I didn't want to believe my own daughter could be so cruel. I made excuses, ignored evidence. Classic enabler behavior." "You were being a mother." "No, I was being a fool. A mother protects all her children, not just the loudest one. I failed you by not stopping her sooner." The financial collapse was swift and complete. The IRS seized everything. The house revealed to have 3 mortgages, the cars leased under false pretenses, even Dorothy's jewelry bought with stolen funds. Bank accounts in multiple states were frozen and emptied for victim restitution. Tyler watched his childhood home being auctioned from the bakery's window. 21 years of my life happened in that house, he said, all of it built on lies and theft. How do I process that? By building something better, I suggested. Something real. He'd been promoted to shift supervisor after 3 months of dedicated work. The same hands that had never held a real job now expertly managed morning rush orders and trained new employees. His transformation was genuine, verified daily through sweat and effort. But perhaps the most dramatic collapse was psychological. Gary, faced with decades in prison and no one left to con, experienced what psychiatrists called a narcissistic collapse. The man who'd spent 20 years playing puppet master found himself with no strings left to pull. During a psychological evaluation for sentencing recommendations, he broke down completely. "I don't know who I am without the game," he admitted to the evaluator. "Every relationship was transactional. Every conversation was strategy. I've been performing so long, there's nothing underneath." Dorothy's breakdown was different, but equally complete. Isolated in federal custody, abandoned by the family she'd alienated, she began writing letters. Not the manipulative prose of before, but raw, rambling confessions of a life wasted on greed. One letter reached me through Amanda. I almost didn't read it, but curiosity won. "I see you now," Dorothy had written. "The real you, not the investment opportunity I turned you into. You were a remarkable child, kind, hardworking, honest, everything I wasn't. Maybe that's why I had to destroy you. Your goodness was a mirror showing my emptiness. I'm sorry. These words mean nothing after everything, but I'm sorry." I kept the letter but didn't respond. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. They can only serve as reminders of where not to travel again. The media coverage of the collapse was extensive. "Family fraud empire crumbles," read one headline. "Mother-son business theft scheme exposed," announced another. Documentary producers circled, true crime podcasters dissected every angle, but I declined all interviews. This wasn't entertainment. It was my life, and I wanted to live it, facing forward, not backward. 6 months after the arrests, the last legal proceedings wound down. Final restitutions amounts were set. Sentences were affirmed on appeal, and the criminal cases were closed. Dorothy would serve 12 years, Gary 25. Their criminal enterprise was officially, completely, irrevocably over. But in its ruins, something unexpected grew. Tyler, working full-time at the bakery while taking business classes at night, had become someone I genuinely respected. His parents, victims bonded by shared experience, had formed a support network that helped each other heal. My business, tested by fire, had emerged stronger and more connected to the community than ever. Standing in my office one evening, looking at photos from our recent charity bake sale, Tyler grinning while teaching kids to shape dough, employees who'd stood by me through everything, customers who'd become friends, I realized the collapse hadn't just been about destruction. Sometimes things need to fall apart completely before they can be rebuilt correctly. Dorothy and Gary's empire of lies had collapsed, but in its place rose something they could never understand: success built on truth, relationships founded on genuine care, and a future constructed from integrity rather than manipulation. The collapse was complete. The rebuilding had begun. Tyler's text came at 5:30 in the morning, earlier than his usual shift. "Can we talk? Found something you need to see." I met him at the flagship bakery, where he was already preparing the day's first batch of sourdough. His technique had improved dramatically. The careful folds, the practiced rhythm, the attention to texture that separated good bakers from great ones. But his expression carried weight beyond bread. "I've been going through Mom's storage unit." He began dusting flour from his hands. "The one she kept secret from Gary. Found this hidden in a box of my baby clothes." He handed me an envelope yellowed with age. Inside was a letter dated 23 years ago, when I was 6 and Tyler hadn't been born yet. "My dear Winifred," it began in Dorothy's younger handwriting. "Today you asked me why some people have lots of money and others don't. You said when you grew up, you'd work hard and help everyone who needed it. Your pure heart breaks mine because I know what I'm becoming." The letter went on a confession written by a woman already feeling the pull of greed, but still fighting it. She wrote about her fears of poverty, her shame at needing food stamps after my father died, her desperate desire to never feel helpless again. "I'm scared I'm losing myself," the letter continued. "Scared I'm becoming someone you won't recognize as your mother. If you're reading this years later and I've become that person, please know there was a moment when I saw clearly when I loved you more than money, when I wanted to be the mother you deserved." My hands shook. This was the mother I'd glimpsed in rare moments. The one who'd taught me to read, who'd walked me to my first job interview, who'd cried with pride at my high school graduation before Gary convinced her I owed them for the cap and gown. "There's more," Tyler said quietly, pulling out a small savings book. "She'd opened an account for you. $200 saved over 6 months from grocery money. The last deposit was a week before she met Gary." $200. Nothing compared to the $30,000 she'd stolen through identity theft, but in that moment it represented everything. A mother's hope before it curdled into entitlement, love before it was weaponized, the road not taken. "I thought you should have these," Tyler continued, "to remember she wasn't always what she became." We stood in silence, surrounded by the warm smell of rising dough and the weight of complex grief. I mourned not just the mother I'd lost to prison, but the mother I'd lost decades earlier to Gary's influence and her own weaknesses. "Thank you," I finally managed. "How are you processing all of this?" Tyler shaped another loaf with careful precision. By working, by learning, by trying to become someone neither of them expected, someone honest. His transformation over the past 6 months had been remarkable. Beyond mastering bakery skills, he'd enrolled in community college, started therapy, and begun making amends to everyone he'd hurt during his entitled years, including his ex-girlfriend Emma. She agreed to have coffee with me. He mentioned trying to sound casual. Not a date, just closure. Apology, she deserves that after how I treated her. "That's mature of you." "Marcus has been teaching me about accountability, Sarah about work ethic, you about integrity. I'm 21 years old and learning basics I should have known at 12, but I'm learning." The morning rush began and I watched Tyler handle difficult customers with patience that would have been impossible for him before. When a regular's credit card declined, he quietly covered it from his tips. When a new employee made mistakes, he coached gently rather than criticized. This was redemption in action. Not grand gestures, but daily choices to be better than yesterday. That afternoon brought another unexpected reconciliation. My childhood friend Jessica arrived with her daughter, the friendship Dorothy's lies had destroyed, slowly rebuilding through careful trust. We sat in the corner booth where Tyler had once proclaimed his entitlement to my business, now just a table where friends could reconnect. "I should have questioned the things your mother told me," Jessica said. "Should have asked you directly instead of believing gossip." We were 17. She was the adult we trusted. "Still, I abandoned you when you needed friends most, working all those jobs, saving every penny, building something from nothing. You did it alone because people like me believed lies instead of evidence." Her daughter, 8 years old and bright-eyed, interrupted our heavy conversation. "Mom says you make the best cookies in the city. Is that true?" "Would you like to be the judge?" I offered, signaling Sarah to bring our sample tray. Watching Jessica's daughter seriously evaluate cookies, making notes on a napkin about chocolate distribution and cookie structural integrity, I saw a possibility. The next generation didn't have to carry our wounds. A week later, Tyler faced his biggest test yet. A reporter had tracked him down, wanting his story as the redeemed son of convicted fraudsters. The old Tyler would have jumped at attention and probably found a way to monetize it. This Tyler asked for my advice. "What do you think I should do?" he asked during our now regular Tuesday mentoring sessions. "What feels right to you?" He thought carefully. "Part of me wants to tell my story to help other people trapped in toxic family situations. but part of me knows I'm still too early in my journey. I haven't earned the right to be anyone's inspiration yet. That's a mature perspective. I'm going to decline for now. Maybe in a few years when I've actually built something worth sharing. Right now, I'm still just learning to be normal. Normal. Such a simple goal, but for someone raised in dysfunction, revolutionary. His commitment to change extended beyond work. He'd started volunteering at a youth center teaching basic cooking skills to teenagers from difficult backgrounds. Watching him patiently show a 15-year-old how to crack eggs without getting shells in the bowl, I saw echoes of every mentor who'd helped me when I was young and lost. They remind me of you, Tyler told me after one session. Working so hard, carrying so much weight. I can't undo how my family hurt you, but maybe I can pay it forward. The redemption wasn't just Tyler's. Other family members were finding their own paths to healing. Aunt Martha had started a support group for family fraud victims. Uncle Robert was working with elder care organizations to help seniors protect themselves from financial exploitation. Even some of Gary's former business associates were cooperating with authorities to help other victims recover assets. But perhaps the most meaningful redemption came from an unexpected source. Linda Henderson, Gary's abandoned wife, reached out with a proposal. She'd received a settlement from the bigamy case and wanted to do something positive with it. My boys are headed to college soon, she explained over video call. The settlement will cover their education, but there's extra. I want to create a scholarship fund for young people escaping financial abuse. Would you consider being on the board? A scholarship fund, taking money gained from Gary's crimes and transforming it into opportunities for others. The poetry of it wasn't lost on me. I'd be honored, I told her. We met in person to plan the fund. Two women whose lives Gary had tried to destroy, now building something he could never understand. Generosity without expectation, support without manipulation. Success measured in lives improved rather than dollars stolen. Tyler joined the scholarship board too, bringing perspective as someone who'd escaped the toxicity. His first act was establishing mentorship requirements. Recipients wouldn't just get money, but guidance from people who'd walked similar paths. Money without wisdom is how my parents operated, he explained to the board. These kids need both. 6 months into his employment, Tyler had saved enough for his own apartment. Moving day was emotional. His first space earned through honest work rather than parental manipulation. The furnished studio was modest compared to his childhood home, but it was real legitimate his. I've never owned anything I earned before, he said, looking around the small space with wonder. Even my furniture is second-hand, bought with bakery wages. It feels clean. Clean, free from the taint of theft, manipulation, lies. I understood completely. As his first year of redemption concluded, Tyler had transformed from entitled manipulator to reliable employee, from family schemer to independent adult. He'd mastered not just baking skills, but life skills, budgeting, responsibility, genuine relationships, honest work. But redemption isn't a destination. It's a daily journey. Tyler still attended therapy, still fought ingrained patterns, still occasionally slipped into old thinking before catching himself. The difference was awareness and effort. I'll probably spend my whole life unlearning what they taught me, he reflected during one of our conversations. But that's okay. Every day I choose differently is a victory. The bakery had become his healing ground, but also mine. Watching him transform helped process my own trauma. If Tyler could break free from 21 years of conditioning, perhaps there was hope for all of us carrying family wounds. One evening, as we closed the flagship store together, Tyler paused in the same spot where he'd once demanded half my business. I'm sorry, he said simply, not just for what I did, but for who I was, for believing I deserved what you built, for treating your life's work as my birthright. You've apologized before, Tyler. I know, but I understand it differently now. Now that I know what it takes to earn even a small paycheck to satisfy even one customer, to perfect even a simple recipe, the arrogance of thinking I deserved half of this. He shook his head. I'm grateful you gave me a chance instead of writing me off. Everyone deserves a chance to change, I said. You took yours. As we locked up and went our separate ways, him to his earned apartment, me to my protected business, I reflected on the nature of redemption. It wasn't erasing the past or forgetting harm done. It was choosing a different future, one deliberate decision at a time. Tyler had miles to go on his journey, as did I on mine. But we were walking forward instead of circling in the patterns of the past, in a family story defined by theft and betrayal that was its own form of victory. The redemption path stretched ahead, neither straight nor easy, but possible, and that possibility, that hope for transformation, was worth more than anything Dorothy and Gary had tried to steal. 2 years, 730 days since I'd pushed those papers back across the restaurant table and said no. The morning sun streamed through the windows of my newest bakery location, number 25, as I prepared for the grand opening celebration. This wasn't just another store. It was a symbol of everything we'd survived and built. Tyler stood beside me, adjusting his manager's nameplate one more time. He'd earned this position through 2 years of dedicated work, continuing education, and a complete transformation of character. His journey from entitled would-be thief to respected leader had been nothing short of remarkable. Nervous? I asked, watching him triple-check the opening day inventory. Terrified, he admitted with a self-aware laugh. But the good kind, the kind that means something matters. The transformation was evident in every detail. His apartment was now filled with business textbooks and baking certifications. His social media, once devoted to gaming and complaints, showcased community service and mentorship activities. Most remarkably, his relationship with Emma had evolved from seeking forgiveness to building something new together, founded on mutual respect and his genuine growth. She's coming today, Tyler mentioned, trying to sound casual, bringing her whole family. They want to support the launch. The grand opening drew hundreds from the community, local business owners who'd supported me through the attacks, employees who'd stood firm against Gary's recruitment attempts, customers who'd become friends, family members who'd chosen truth over Dorothy's lies. Grandmother cut the ceremonial ribbon, her eyes bright with pride at 88. This represents more than a new store, she announced to the crowd. It represents resilience, integrity, and the power of community over corruption. The business had transformed too. What began as a desperate defensive action had evolved into something greater. We'd implemented employee profit sharing, ensuring everyone who helped build our success shared in it. We'd created training programs that turned entry-level positions into career paths. We'd established the Rising Strong Foundation, funded by a percentage of profits to help others escape financial abuse. Marcus, now Regional Operations Director, had opened 2 franchise locations of his own, with support from our new Small Business Incubator program. Sarah had become head of human resources, implementing policies that made us a model employer in the industry. The ripple effects of choosing integrity over exploitation touched hundreds of lives. Winifred, a familiar voice called out. Janet Chen, no relation to my attorney, pushed through the crowd with her book club members. We've been customers since your first location. Watching you overcome everything, seeing Tyler's transformation. You've given this whole community a masterclass in redemption and perseverance. As the celebration continued, I found a quiet moment in my new office. On the wall hung 3 frames my business license from 7 years ago, the photo of 15-year-old me working at the grocery store, and surprisingly, Dorothy's letter from when I was 6, a reminder that people are complex, that even those who hurt us might have once held better intentions. A knock interrupted my reflection. Come in. Tyler entered, carrying a folder. I wanted to give you this today. He handed me a check for $30,000. Full restitution for what mom stole through identity theft. Saved from my salary and the scholarship I earned for business school. Every penny earned honestly. Tyler, the court ordered Dorothy to pay restitution, which she can't from prison. This debt belongs to our family, and I'm the only one free to repay it. Please, I need to do this. I looked at the check representing 2 years of careful savings, sacrificed luxuries, and determination to right wrongs he didn't commit. This must have been difficult to save. Every deposit felt like breaking another chain, he said, like proving I'm not them, that their legacy ends with me. I accepted the check, understanding its symbolic weight exceeded its monetary value. Thank you. There's something else, Tyler continued, pulling out a letter. From Mom. She asked me to give it to you today. I haven't read it. Dorothy's handwriting had changed in prison, become smaller, more careful. I read while Tyler waited. Winifred, I watch the news from prison, see your continued success, Tyler's transformation, the community you've built. I understand now what I tried to steal wasn't just money or property. It was your right to build something meaningful, to be more than I could imagine. I won't ask for forgiveness. Some actions are unforgivable, but I want you to know that watching Tyler become the person you always were, hardworking, honest, generous, brings me more joy than any stolen money ever could. He sends photos of his work, his small apartment, his honest life. You gave him what I never could, the chance to earn genuine pride. 20 years ago, I wrote you a letter I never sent, fearing what I was becoming. That woman would be horrified at who I became, but perhaps she would find hope in who you've remained despite my worst efforts. Build your empire of integrity. Raise Tyler to be better than Gary and I ever were. Create the family we destroyed through greed. You've already won the only victory that matters. You became yourself despite us. Dorothy. I folded the letter carefully, feeling neither anger nor forgiveness, just a calm acknowledgement of what was. Dorothy had 10 more years to serve Gary, 23. Their choices had led to consequences they couldn't escape, but their son had chosen differently, and that mattered. The afternoon brought more celebrations. The mayor presented a community leadership award. The Chamber of Commerce welcomed our newest location. But the moment that touched me most came from an unexpected source. A young woman approached hesitantly, clutching a folder. Ms. Williams, I'm Maria Santos. I received the Rising Strong Scholarship last year. I wanted to thank you personally. Maria's story echoed too many others. Family financial abuse, identity theft by relatives, dreams deferred by others' greed. But with the scholarship and mentorship program, she'd escaped, started her own catering business, begun building something real. Your story saved me, she said simply. Knowing someone else survived, thrived even, it gave me hope when I had none. As the day wound down, the new location bustling with customers, I stood outside watching the community we'd built. Tyler trained new employees with patient expertise. Marcus coordinated with suppliers he'd cultivated over years. Sarah managed the organized chaos with grace earned through experience. My phone buzzed with a message from Amanda Chen. Saw the news coverage of your opening. 25 locations, hundreds of employees, a foundation helping abuse victims, and one completely reformed Tyler. You didn't just win Winifred. You transformed poison into medicine. That evening, we held a private celebration for the core team who'd weathered the storm together. Tyler gave a speech that moved even cynical Marcus to tears. 2 years ago, I stood in Winifred's bakery demanding half of something I hadn't earned, couldn't run, and didn't deserve, Tyler began. I thought success meant taking from others. Winifred and all of you taught me it means building something worth protecting, creating value instead of extracting it, lifting others as you rise. He turned to me. You could have destroyed me along with my parents. Instead, you gave me minimum wage and maximum opportunity. You let me fail safely, learn, slowly, grow genuinely. I'll spend the rest of my life earning that second chance. Emma joined Tyler, her presence representing another circle of healing. She'd witnessed his worst, walked away from toxicity, then returned when genuine change proved possible. Their relationship, built on truth rather than manipulation, showed that patterns could be broken. As midnight approached on this day of new beginnings, I found myself on the roof of the new location, city lights sparkling below. Tyler joined me, bringing 2 cups of coffee from our premium blend. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "About circles. How Dorothy and Gary ran in circles, scheming and stealing but never building. How I could have been trapped in circles of resentment and revenge. How you broke the circle they set you in." "We both did," Tyler corrected. "You broke yours by choosing to build instead of blame. I just followed your example." We stood in comfortable silence, 2 survivors of the same family war, now allies in construction rather than destruction. Below us, the last customers left with boxes of pastries, the staff cleaned with pride in their workplace, the community continued its rhythm of connection and commerce. "What's next?" Tyler asked. "Another 25 locations, nationwide expansion." "An empire?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe this is enough. Maybe success isn't about endless growth, but sustainable goodness. Building something worth passing on, creating opportunities for others, proving that business doesn't require brutality." "The anti-Gary philosophy," Tyler said with understanding. "Wait, the anti-theft philosophy," I corrected. "Whether it's money, credit, opportunity, or dignity, we don't steal, we create." As we descended back to lock up the new location, Tyler paused at the entrance. "Can I ask you something? Do you ever wonder who you'd be if none of this had happened? If Mom and Gary had just been normal parents?" I considered it. Probably someone successful but softer. Someone who hadn't learned to fight so hard for everything. Maybe someone who took integrity for granted instead of choosing it deliberately every day. So in a twisted way, they gave us something. They gave us an example of who not to be. Sometimes that's the most valuable lesson. We locked the doors of location 25, but the future remained wide open. Tyler would continue growing, possibly taking over operations as I focused on the foundation. The business would expand thoughtfully, each new location a community asset rather than just a profit center. The rising strong foundation would help more victims escape financial abuse. But tonight, on this anniversary of destruction transformed into construction, I allowed myself a moment of complete satisfaction. My mother sat in federal prison contemplating decades of choices. Her boyfriend served his time in a different facility, his cons finally concluded. Their son stood beside me, proof that bloodlines don't determine destiny. I'd built an empire not of theft, but of honest work. Created a family not of blood, but of choice. Proved that rising strong wasn't about never falling, but about choosing how to stand back up. The bakery's motto, painted on every wall and lived in every action, said it all. Built on integrity, sustained by community, sweetened by redemption. To everyone reading this who's faced family betrayal, financial abuse, or the theft of trust along with money, you are not alone. Document everything. Seek legal help. Build your own support network. And remember, their crimes don't define your worth. Their limitations don't set your boundaries. Their failures don't predict your future. Choose to build rather than blame. Create rather than steal. Rise strong rather than sink low. The best revenge against those who tried to steal your future is to build one so bright they have to close their eyes against it. Thank you for following this journey. If it helped even one person recognize manipulation, escape abuse, or choose integrity, then sharing this pain transformed into purpose. What defines your empire? Theft or integrity? The choice always is yours. Share your own stories of overcoming family financial abuse in the comments. Like if this resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and redemption. And remember, we rise by lifting others. Build something worth protecting. Create a legacy worth leaving. Choose integrity always. The sunrise promises another day of honest work, genuine connection, and continued growth. Another day to prove that what's built on truth stands stronger than what's stolen through lies. Another day to rise strong,